Our story begins as Yuan Ming is transported into a game world, where he immediately gains the only hidden talent, Eternal Power. This unique gift allows all Eternal units within his territory to take any short-term buff they receive and transform it into a permanent increase in strength. He is stunned, realizing that a single support skill will now provide a permanent benefit. It is essentially a cheat code, but what excites him even more is that this frozen world of survival is exactly the same game he used to play back home. With all his previous experience, he is certain that in this new era, he can stay far ahead of everyone else. He is ready to soar and change his fate, but a moment later, a woman suddenly appears by his side. To his surprise, it is Lu Muxue, the sister-in-law of his late boss. Simultaneously, the system issues a notification. The game is launching a family survival mode, a new version where players are grouped in units of up to 4. Those without relatives will be randomly separated from those nearby. He understands the situation immediately. He had been about to drive Muxue to the boss's funeral when the game invaded reality, pulling them both in. The timing was perfect, but his attention is quickly drawn to the professional class selection panel appearing before him. Players can choose from 5 classes: Cold Iron Mechanic, Polar Warrior, Frost Mage, Aurora Knight, and Snow Hunter. Having played the game before, he knows exactly what each role entails. To be honest, the choice is vital. Among these options, the Cold Iron Mechanic is arguably the most powerful of them all. However, that class only shines in the late game and is quite weak early on. Meanwhile, the Polar Warrior, along with the Snow Hunter, offers decent early game power but lacks sufficient mana in the later stages. Of the remaining Frost Mage and Aurora Knight, the Knight is a support role that usually relies on teammates. The Frost Mage, on the other hand, performs well throughout the entire journey, and so he chooses the Frost Mage class without hesitation. The system congratulates him on his successful selection. His elemental affinity is now unlocked, and we see his resistance to the biting cold slightly increase. His starting equipment is placed into the storage box, just as the system issues another urgent notification. Only 4 hours and 32 minutes remain until nightfall. Fortunately, during this initial novice protection period, no monsters will attack the camp. This safety net will last for another 5 days and 17 hours. Yuan Ming frowns at the display. The temperature is already minus 32 degrees, and it will drop another 20 tonight. Surviving the frost depends entirely on the campfire and the spirit totem. The campfire is currently easy to manage, raising the temperature within 10 meters by 5 to 20 degrees. As for the damaged spirit totem, it requires stone and wood to be repaired. Luckily, right there near the camp's flickering fire, lies a pile of white stones and pre-cut wood. Just as he prepares to gather them, Lu Muxue, having finally processed the system's overwhelming messages, calls out to him. Aixing, she begins softly. She asks him which profession she should choose, looking to him for guidance in this strange new reality. He suggests she choose the Aurora Knight. To be honest, his advice is slightly self-serving, as the Knight possesses powerful buffing skills that are usually fleeting, but with his eternal power talent, he can turn those temporary boosts into permanent states. Imagine an army with infinite, stacking buffs. It would be terrifying. Muxue doesn't doubt his decision for a second. In this frozen world, he is the only person she knows. He then opens the starter crate, finding bread, a stone axe, and a stone hammer among the supplies. With these initial resources in hand, he immediately begins the work of repairing the broken spirit totem. Muxue offers to help during the process, so he directs her to gather materials to upgrade the campfire instead. Soon, the fire reaches level 2, extending its warmth to a 20-meter radius. A small victory, but a vital one. At the same moment, the spirit totem is successfully restored. The system congratulates him as the territory interface unlocks. With the territory interface unlocked, we see that he can now construct more basic infrastructure. The system notifications continue to chime. As the first survivor in the entire server to build a spirit totem, Yuan Ming receives a rare reward, the Frost Healing Skill Book. This skill consumes mental power to restore a target's health by 0.8% every second. A useful tool indeed. The effect lasts for 3 seconds. Skill books are quite rare in this world, making this a very pleasant surprise for him. Next, he opens his personal panel and selects the Polar Dweller Hut from the construction interface. It is a vital structure. By consuming food, he can summon polar dwellers to work for him, and the hut can accommodate up to 4 people. The repair time is set at 45 minutes, but adding more people to the task will naturally speed up the process. Drawing on his gaming experience, he knows the optimal move is to prioritize getting the Polar Dweller Hut up and running. He calls Muxue over to help, and before long, the repair of the Polar Dweller Hut is successfully completed. Once again, the system announces that he is the first survivor on the server to construct a Polar Dweller Hut. He is rewarded with 50 loaves of bread. Since recruiting 1 worker costs 5 food units, he is understandably delighted. With this unexpected bounty in hand, he decides to immediately recruit a full staff of 4 Polar Dwellers. The Polar Dwellers have their own names, of course, but for the sake of simplicity, he decides to rename them himself. He calls them De Zhuang, Air Zhuang, San Zhuang, and Si Zhuang. After that, he returns to the construction panel. He sees options for indoor stoves, cooking benches, a lumber yard, and even a sewing shop among the available buildings. However, these require massive resources. To be honest, there is no time to waste, so he sends De Zhuang and Er Zhuang to chop wood. While they gather timber, he sends San Zhuang and Si Zhuang to the nearby rocks to begin mining for stone. Meanwhile, he and Mushua use their remaining materials to upgrade the campfire to level 3 before moving inside to build a stove. After adding some simple furniture, he finally breathes a sigh of relief and decides to check the chat panel. Opening the world channel, we see that almost everyone is complaining about their confusion in this new world. He, however, is thinking ahead. It seems that besides our protagonist, no one else has ever played this game before. Suddenly, Er Zhuang's voice rings out from outside the camp, and seeing Yuanming, he rushes over to report. He cries out that there is a giant snake among the neighbors just outside the camp's borders. De Zhuang has been bitten and is fading fast, so Yuanming quickly opens the worker's status panel. He sees that the man's health is halved and he has gained a poison status, but he breathes a sigh of relief. Level 1 poisoning is manageable. He simply has Mushua cast her purifying tree, and she whispers a soft incantation. She calls for the holy Aurora to bless him, and in an instant, the toxin is cleared from De Zhuang's system. At the same time, Yuanming casts his frost healing, and we see green numbers constantly floating above De Zhuang's head. The display shows a steady stream of +2 healing, while the system confirms the frost healing was successful. Suddenly, the Eternal Power talent activates, making the skill a permanent state, which leaves him completely stunned. He hadn't expected a healing spell to become a permanent buff, but his shock quickly turns into pure excitement. This means De Zhuang is now a frontline tank with infinite health regeneration. He is, quite literally, invincible. Feeling the surging power within his own body, De Zhuang immediately speaks with the utmost respect. He thanks his lord, claiming that Yuanming's power is truly as vast and great as the ocean. The system then notifies us that De Zhuang's loyalty has increased from 70 to 80 points. Naturally, Yuanming wonders if this permanent healing can also be applied to himself and Mushua. He casts the frost healing on Mushua, and sure enough, the system chime rings out once again. The healing is now permanent for her as well. Both are shocked by this ability. It is simply too overpowered. He intends to cast it on himself next, but a sudden wave of dizziness washes over his mind. He realizes he has reached the limit of his mental power, but to be honest, it hardly matters now. Yuanming decides it's best to take the now immortal De Zhuang and the others to deal with that giant snake immediately. Upon reaching the site, the system reveals the serpent's information. It is a level 2 monster. It's no wonder De Zhuang and the others couldn't defeat it before, but with infinite health regeneration, he can now stand at the front. It takes the group no time at all to slay the beast, successfully taking down the snowy poison snake. He gains 30 experience points and a notification congratulating him on being the first in the region to kill a wild monster. As a first kill reward, he receives a recruitment scroll for a snake-human priest. This scroll allows him to summon a level 5 snake-human priest to assist him in battle. Delighted by this, he uses the scroll immediately, and a beautiful serpent woman appears before him. She manifests instantly and addresses him with deep respect as her lord. The priestess, Elena, offers her services, and as Yuanming checks her status panel, he notices something interesting. His expression shifts as he sees Elena possesses 2 powerful buff skills, the first being scale armor. This skill provides 10 additional points of armor to herself or an ally for a short duration. The second is Snake Frenzy, which grants a berserk effect to herself or a friendly unit. It increases movement and attack speed by 20% for 60 seconds, but there is a catch. When combined with his Eternal Power talent, any buff-type skill becomes a permanent state. He immediately has Elena cast both skills on the entire group, and in an instant, everyone, including himself, is transformed. They all begin to enjoy the permanent benefits of these 2 powerful status enhancements. He also applies permanent frost healing to Elena. Feeling the surge of power, she is visibly shaken. She can't help but marvel, claiming that her lord's power is truly vast and unpredictable. With a satisfied nod, he proceeds to dismantle the carcass of the snowy poison snake for resources. He obtains a poison brain, which can add toxic damage to weapons, along with 17 pieces of snake meat. Upon seeing the meat, De Zhuang and Er Zhuang's eyes light up instantly. They haven't tasted meat in ages. They claim they'd give their lives for just one bite, but Yuanming simply smiles at their dramatic display. He promises that if they work hard, everyone will be sharing a hot pot of snake soup tonight. After returning to the camp, San Zhuang approaches to deliver a report to his lord. We learn that not far from where they were gathering food, they discovered a small coal mine. However, 2 snowy wolves are guarding the site, so he didn't dare to get any closer to investigate. Yuanming's eyes sparkle at the mention of coal, a fuel far superior to simple timber for generating heat. With coal, he can save his wood for building other facilities, so he asks about the wolf's strength. San Zhuang suggests they are slightly stronger than the snake, likely level 3 or 4 monsters. With the level 5 Elena now on his side, he certainly has the power to conquer them. He promises the scouts extra meat for dinner and immediately leads the group toward the mine. As they approach the cave, the system displays the mine's information and the two snowy wolves appear. The panel confirms they are level 3 wild monsters, but our group has infinite health and incredible defense. With Elena joining the fray, the battle is over almost as soon as it began as she slays the wolves. The skirmish ends with a notification that she gained 40 experience points while he gained 20. He proceeds to dismantle the two wolf carcasses, and to be honest, the loot is unexpectedly generous. Not only does he find 2 green-grade wolf pelts, but he also gathers a staggering 134 portions of meat. Along with bones and fangs, he finds the most important prize, a blue-grade twin wolf knight recruitment scroll. This rare scroll allows him to immediately summon a powerful, level 10 twin wolf knight to his side. But before proceeding, he must ensure there is enough food, having just summoned the level 5 Elena. Now, with a level 10 twin wolf knight joining, things are truly looking up, especially since wolf pelts are perfect for crafting. These pelts are the raw materials for cold-resistant clothing, solving a very urgent problem for both him and Lu Mushua. Without delay, he takes one of the pelts and drapes it over Lu Mushua, who is standing nearby, shivering uncontrollably. Lu Mushua's eyes instantly fill with gratitude. He simply smiles and begins the process of occupying the mine. The moment the occupation is successful, the system notifies him that he has also obtained a bronze treasure chest. Then, the system's voice rings out again, announcing that as the first survivor to occupy a resource point, he is rewarded with purple-grade gear, ancient Ice Rider Barrett clothing, and 12.7mm ammunition. He is momentarily stunned by the notification. It couldn't be a Barrett? He wonders if he heard the system correctly. Yes, a sniper rifle in a fantasy world. The system reminds him there is still that bronze chest. Opening it reveals a mountain of various supplies. Among them is a market blueprint, which, once built, will allow him to trade resources with other survivors. He examines the remaining items, a staff he can use himself, and snow boots with obvious cold protection benefits. Needless to say, the medical kit for treating colds and flu is also a very welcome find. After confirming nothing else is left, he dismantles the bronze chest itself, gaining 5 pieces of copper. Returning outside the mine, Lu Mushua informs him that they have already gathered 112 pieces of coal from the area. That should last them quite a while. He smiles at the shivering Lu Mushua and decides to help her out. He hands over the snow boots, and though she is grateful, her legs are so frozen she can barely move. Seeing her struggle to change shoes, he simply does it for her, then carries her back to the territory in his arms. Lu Mushua blushes the entire way, but says nothing. Back at the base, he first checks on their current resources. He assigns Da Zhuang and Erzwang to build the logging camp, while San Zhuang is sent to construct the market. Si Zhuang is tasked with building a small shelter for Elena. Once those tasks are finished, the group can finally rest and eat. We return to the Lord's cabin with him and Lu Mushua. He suggests that Lu Mushua take a short rest while he sets about building a simple stove. He begins cooking the snake meat from earlier that day. Outside, we see the sky is growing dark. The temperature begins to plummet, reaching a staggering minus 50 degrees Celsius outside the walls. Even indoors with the stove burning, it only reaches minus 16 degrees, hardly a tropical paradise. Fortunately, Da Zhuang and the others finished their work just in time and retreated into the cabin. He tells Da Zhuang and the rest of the crew that he is quite pleased with their hard work. As a reward, they are invited to feast on the snake soup. The sight of real meat leaves them breathless. Between mouthfuls, they vow to work even harder to repay their lord's generosity. Their loyalty naturally soars, with everyone's favorability rating climbing well above 80. He then checks on Elena, whose hunger has hit 50, and asks if she prefers her meat raw or cooked. She requests raw meat, so he pulls out 2 pieces of snake meat to hand over. On second thought, he puts those back and offers her 2 pieces of wolf meat instead. Elena's favorability rises instantly, though her hunger level only creeps up to 60. He frowns, knowing that a prolonged state of hunger would eventually cause her loyalty to drop. Since Elena is his primary source of muscle, he decides not to be stingy and produces 4 more pieces. This finally brings her hunger to 80, though her massive appetite does make him sigh, just a little. Especially considering he still has that powerful recruitment scroll for the Twin Wolf Knight waiting in his inventory. It seems that starting tomorrow, he will have to find a way to gather even more food to keep up with these appetites. Since the night makes it impossible to work or explore, he decides to open the world chat interface instead. He wants to see how the other survivors are progressing, but the situation, to be honest, looks quite grim. The feed is filled with death notices and tragic reports, though a few players are sharing their own survival tips. Some suggest prioritizing the Lord's cabin and upgrading the campfire, noting that the territory itself offers a safe haven. It can be used to dodge monster attacks and the like. After a moment of thought, he decides to write down his own advice. He warns that the nighttime temperature can drop to minus 60 degrees Celsius, and if a cabin isn't ready yet, one can use wood and stone to build a simple shelter to barely survive the first night's freezing cold. Next, we see him move to the regional channel, which covers a square area of 500 kilometers on each side. In addition, he can see that the current region is designated as Region 174. The online count shows 38,224 survivors remaining out of the original 40,173, a sobering statistic, indeed. As for the messages, he notices that most people seem to be from cities near his original world. It appears the transmigration randomly grouped people from neighboring cities together in the same area. The feed is a chaotic mix of pleas for help, shared experiences, and various trade offers. He heads to the market intending to trade for supplies, where a listing for a mage skill book immediately catches his eye. The information for the Ice Armor spell is exactly what he was looking for. Ice Armor can increase the armor value of an ally for a certain period of time. Although the base mana cost is quite high, making it a cumulative skill, for him, it is something else entirely. Combined with his eternal power, he could make the shield last forever, a truly divine skill in his hands. The asking price of 50 food items is steep, but the seller has indicated that they are open to negotiation. He decides to send a private message to the seller, offering 10 food items in exchange for the Ice Armor skill book. The response is immediate and indignant. I said negotiate, not rob me. 10 items for a skill book? You must be joking. He remains calm, telling the seller not to rush, and hints that his offer isn't just for ordinary food. When he reveals it's actually meat, the seller is stunned. He quickly sends over the item information to prove it. The seller counters, demanding at least 40 food units, which translates to 8 pieces of snake meat, or the deal is off. He scoffs at the demand, offering 3 pieces of meat at most, noting that Ice Armor is merely an early game skill. He warns that by tomorrow, the drop rate will rise and food will be even harder to find. The seller hesitates. Finally, the seller relents, figuring 3 pieces of meat is enough to keep his family going for another day. Seeing an opportunity, he softens his stance slightly, offering to make it 20 food units by adding 5 loaves of bread. The other party happily agrees, and just like that, he successfully acquires the Ice Armor skill book. The spell consumes a bit of mental strength to grant himself or an ally armor equal to 60% of his spirit stat. Normally, it only lasts for 30 seconds. With his current spirit at 8, it provides a modest 5 points of armor. But a moment later, as the spell activates, his eternal power talent kicks in, just as we expected. The skill becomes a permanent buff, increasing his armor by 5 points indefinitely. He is, understandably, quite pleased. His total armor has now reached 15 points, meaning the attacks of monsters below level 3 won't even be able to scratch him. After that, he casts a layer of ice armor on Lu Mushua as well. Meanwhile, Mushua has been scrolling through the chat channel, learning about the dire state of other survivors. It is only now that she realizes not everyone is lucky enough to be staying in a warm, sturdy cabin like this one. She turns to him and says, "Thank you, Axing. If it weren't for you, I might have frozen to death outside already." He simply tells her not to worry about it. Axing explains that since they've been paired up, they need to cooperate with each other to survive better in this world. He notes that helping her is effectively the same as helping himself. Mushua promises to adapt quickly so she won't hold him back, and with that, she says goodnight. As they prepare to sleep, we see a sudden friend request pop up on Mushua's interface. It is her mother, by Yunlan, who immediately follows up with a video call invitation. Mushua hesitates before accepting, only to hear Yunlan immediately demand to know if she has extra food. Her mother begs for support, claiming Mushua has no idea how difficult things are for the rest of them. She complains that her, the 2 younger brothers, and the father are suffering with barely any food from their crates. It wasn't even enough for a single full meal, and Mushua is forced to listen to this for quite some time. A bitter smile plays on Mushua's lips as she realizes things here are exactly as they were back on Blue Star. Her parents don't actually care if she's alive or dead, they only care about what she can give them. She recalls how, back home, they had tried to force her to marry some local gang leader for their own gang. Fortunately, the man died before the wedding, and then she was transported to this strange new world. Thinking she had finally escaped that nightmare family, she tells them she simply doesn't have any spare food. However, her father immediately chimes in to cross-examine her, accusing her of lying to them. He points out that she's living in a house and demands to know where she got the fur coat she's wearing. Then, the voice of one of her younger brothers rings out, identifying the fur as a wolf skin. Realizing she has meat, her mother explodes in a rage, cursing her for daring to deceive her own family. She calls Mushua an ungrateful wolf, claiming she wasted years raising her if she won't even share a meal. Faced with this barrage of accusations, Mushua's eyes fill with tears, leaving her completely at a loss for words. Mushua's mother only grows more aggressive, snapping that Mushua has no right to feel aggrieved when they've been hungry all day. She tells Mushua that she's clearly forgotten her place, but right then, Axing suddenly appears by Mushua's side. He asks the 2 old-timers what they're chirping about, prompting the mother to demand who this stranger is. She claims she's speaking to her daughter and asks what right he has to interfere, but Axing tells her she doesn't need to know his name. As for his right, he explains that he killed the wolf and the meat belongs to him, so their demands are nothing but a dream. He declares he won't give them so much as a breadcrumb, noting that they have their own hands and feet to work with. He asks if they have no shame, coming to suck their daughter's blood instead of finding food for themselves, which is a fair point, really. After delivering this verbal lashing, Axing gestures for Mushua to take action. She hangs up the video call immediately, and the world finally falls silent, though Mushiue remains visibly shaken by the encounter. She struggles to keep her emotions under control, but she manages to look at him and speak. She thanks Axing for ending the nightmare for her, and he simply tells her not to worry about it. He makes it clear that no one is getting resources from him for free, and he warns her that she must remember this lesson too. He explains that if she gives in once, there will be a second time, and they will never stop asking for more. They will demand everything until there's nothing left, and deep down, Mushiue knows he is right about her family. She realizes that being in this new world is a gift, a chance to finally escape her past and start over. With a newfound resolve, she nods solemnly and promises Axing that she will stay strong. A moment later, remembering something, Mushiue heads to the stove and brings over a small bucket of hot water. She notices that Axing's feet are red from the cold and offers to help him wash them with the warm water. Meanwhile, back in their own shelter, Mushiue's parents are absolutely livid over the way they were treated. However, the father suddenly pauses, realizing Axing looks familiar, and after a moment, the mother finally recognizes who he is. We learn that they had previously forced Mushiue to marry a powerful underworld boss named Xinjiang. And as it turns out, Axing was merely a driver under Xinjiang, specifically assigned to drive for Mushiue. Realizing Axing was just a driver, Mushiue's father lets out a cold smile as a plan forms. He had just seen something on the screen. Feng Long, a prominent figure from the Sanying society back in the city, was currently gathering his subordinates. Since Feng Long was once a fanatical pursuer of Mushiue, the father realizes he can contact him to request assistance. He plans to use the opportunity to eliminate Axing. Meanwhile, the next day arrives, and a global announcement warns all survivors. They have survived the first night of the Ice Age, but the novice protection period has only 4 days and 22 hours remaining. Checking the chat channel, Axing notices the online count has dropped by over 1,000, though he doesn't dwell on it for long. Instead, he instructs De Zhuang and the others to continue upgrading the polar huts and constructing additional buildings. After that, he takes out the Twin Wolf Knight summoning scroll and uses it, instantly bringing forth a knight atop a massive war wolf. The knight, Assam, kneels before him, ready to serve. Axing takes a moment to examine Assam's status panel. He discovers that not only is Assam powerful, but the wolf itself has its own actual level, a true 2-for-1 deal. It's an incredible bargain, really. He nods and works with the others to buff Assam with ice armor and ice healing spells. With the addition of scale armor and the Snakeman Berserk skill, Assam feels a sudden surge of overwhelming power. Assam declares that Axing is the lord with the greatest strength he has ever known. He pledges his absolute loyalty, and because Axing helped him increase his strength, his devotion grows even deeper. His loyalty rating rises to 80, and Axing can't help but smile with satisfaction at the result. The power of eternity is certainly proving its worth. He then gives Assam his first assignment, a scouting mission. He is to head northeast of the camp and mark every resource point or wild creature he encounters along the way. Once the exploration reaches 10 kilometers, he is to return and report, a command Assam accepts without hesitation. We see that he can now summon 8 more polar humans, so he spends 15 units to bring them forth and begins naming them. He names them Zhuang 5 through Zhuang 8, promptly assigning them to gather stone and wood while continuing the camp's construction. After that, he leads Mushiue toward the market, intending to sell some of his surplus supplies in exchange for more useful items. He starts by listing wolf meat, specifying that he will only accept equipment, weapons, or skill books in return. The appearance of fresh meat instantly triggers a frenzy among the other survivors, and his private messages begin to overflow. However, most of these people are hoping to trade their basic territory resources, such as wood or stone, for a meal. They offer various materials, including timber, stone blocks, and even small amounts of iron they've managed to scavenge. Axing offers a kind warning that basic materials are the foundation of survival and shouldn't be traded away lightly. While some survivors take his advice and withdraw their offers, others remain desperate and insist on the trade. Their reasoning is simple. If they starve to death now, future development won't matter much. To be honest, it's hard to argue with that. Still, his supply of wolf meat is limited, so he decides not to accept common stone and wood for the time being. He does, however, see an opportunity to trade for iron so he can finally get the blacksmith shop up and running. A blacksmith shop would allow him to craft basic equipment, such as stone spears, to better arm his growing workforce. More advanced gear would require blueprints, but for now, the main issue is that most survivors have very little iron. Most only have 2 or 3 pieces, and trading a full portion of wolf meat for just 2 iron would be a terrible deal. He asks the system if the meat can be divided, learning that a standard 1 kilogram portion can be split into smaller pieces. It can be divided into 10 portions of 100 grams each, so he quickly breaks the meat down into 50 smaller servings. He updates the trade terms to 1 small portion of meat for 2 pieces of iron, and the resources start pouring in immediately. Checking his inventory, he realizes he now has everything needed to build both the tailor shop and the blacksmith shop. While other survivors are still struggling to understand the basics, his territory is already beginning to take a professional shape. We could say his progress is moving quite rapidly now. As long as he maintains this steady rhythm, it won't be long at all before he can upgrade the territory and construct more advanced buildings. One could say the future is looking very bright indeed. After that, he spends some time coaching Mushiue on how to fight, but suddenly, a system notification interrupts them. His territory member, Assam, is under attack. His heart sinks instantly, knowing Assam is already a level 10 knight. With the support of his 2 wolves, he should be nearly invincible against anything below tier 2. An attack like this means that Assam has encountered a truly formidable enemy. Standing nearby, Mushiue receives the same notification, and her eyes immediately fill with worry. He tries to comfort her, reminding her that Assam carries for permanent buffs. As long as he isn't killed in a single strike, his survival shouldn't be an issue. Sure enough, a few minutes later, no death notification arrives. Instead, he sees Assam returning to the outskirts of the camp, looking quite battered. He immediately grabs his Barrett rifle and rushes forward to ask what happened. Assam quickly apologizes and begins to explain. About 3 kilometers from the camp, they discovered a powerful creature known as a snowy storm bear. The bear can actually discharge electricity, and neither he nor the wolves were a match for it. If it weren't for the buffs the Lord had provided beforehand, they might not have made it back at all. He estimates only a tier 2 knight would stand a chance of defeating it. Hearing this, he thinks for a moment, restores their status, and gives an order. He tells Assam to lead him there to see this snowy storm bear for himself. Being only 3 kilometers away, it is far too close for comfort. He must gauge its strength, and he has the confidence to do so. With his Barrett in hand, almost no monster below level 20 can oppose him. Half an hour later, they arrive at a cave at the foot of a snowy mountain, where the system issues an immediate warning. They have reached the snowy storm bear's lair, home to an extremely dangerous and powerful creature. The system advises extreme caution. Assam looks to him and asks if he should go in to lure the beast out. Assam believes that with enough caution, escaping shouldn't be a problem. He nods in agreement, and not long after, we feel the very ground begin to tremble beneath their feet. Then, in the next heartbeat, a massive shadow, at least 8 meters tall, emerges from the cave as a terrifying roar echoes through the air. The temperature seems to drop instantly as the beast reveals itself to our group. This is the Snowy Storm Bear, a level 15 tier 2 elite creature with over 4,000 health points. Its attack power is a staggering 347. Its first skill, Bear Palm Strike, targets any enemy weaker than itself, guaranteeing a knockback effect. Its second skill, Wild Roar, releases a terrifying wave of sound, leaving any enemies within 30 meters stunned for 3 seconds. And then there is its third skill, Lightning Strike. It summons the power of lightning to strike all enemies within a 20-meter radius, dealing massive elemental damage and leaving them paralyzed. A charming neighbor to have, wouldn't you say? Looking at these 3 skills alone, he realizes this bear's strength is nearly on par with a level 20 monster. However, he doesn't panic. Instead, he calmly analyzes the situation, noting the beast has 4,000 health. With his Barrett rifle, he calculates it will take at least 5 well-placed shots to take the creature down. Currently, they are 500 meters apart. At the bear's top speed, it will take 10 seconds to reach him. Since the Barrett has a 2-second firing interval, 10 seconds is just enough time. He raises the rifle and aims. He fires a single shot at the Snowy Storm Bear. In an instant, blood sprays from the beast's massive frame, dealing a terrifying 872 damage. The impact is so great that the bear loses its balance and tumbles to the ground. He doesn't stop there, pulling the trigger a second time. This time, the damage reaches a staggering 1,234 points. It seems he triggered the Barrett's armor-piercing effect. After taking 2 heavy hits, the Snowy Storm Bear is consumed by pure killing intent. It lunges toward him once more, and he calmly fires a third shot. But somehow, this shot misses its mark entirely. He can't help but curse his own aim, wondering how he could possibly miss such a massive target. At this moment, the Snowy Storm Bear still has 1,974 health points remaining. Doing the math quickly, he realizes the distance between them only allows for 2 more shots. Yet, despite the pressure, he remains unnaturally calm. He fires again, dealing another 893 damage. Now, the Snowy Storm Bear is a mere 100 meters away from his position. This is it, his very last chance to fire. The entire outcome of the battle rests on this single moment, and the rifle barks once more. A terrifying 1,574 damage points float up from the Snowy Storm Bear's head. A perfect shot, to be sure. That final strike didn't just hit, it triggered a headshot effect. The system notification chimes in to confirm the kill. He has successfully slain the level 15 Snowy Storm Bear, marking his first kill of such a powerful creature. He gains 350 base experience multiplied by 400%, totaling a massive 1,400 experience points. His level rises instantly to level 3. To his delight, he has managed to jump 2 entire levels in a single heartbeat. But the system rewards aren't finished yet. For defeating the bear, he receives a basic Heart of Strength. The basic Heart of Strength is an advancement item, allowing any level 10 survivor or territory member to complete their evolution into a tier 2 being, which increases all their attributes by a full 100%. Next, he receives a basic elemental crystal, a rare gem infused with the raw power of the elements. It can be used to construct basic magical buildings or serve as a material for alchemy. Then, a special announcement follows. As the first survivor on the server to kill an elite creature, he is awarded a blueprint for a basic elemental sword tower. He also receives an Icefield Druid recruitment scroll. Meanwhile, the system notes that Elena and Assam are deeply impressed by the overwhelming power he just displayed. Their loyalty to him increases significantly. With a faint smile, he tosses the basic Heart of Strength over to Assam. The warrior is stunned, calling out to his lord. Assam asks if such a precious item can truly be given to him. After all, this mission was a group effort. He tells the warrior that he has proven his bravery and skill and is more than worthy of possessing even greater power. Assam is instantly moved to tears, his eyes shimmering with profound gratitude toward his lord. He vows to lay down his life for his master. The system confirms that Assam has been deeply touched by this gesture. His loyalty surges, reaching a score of 95. At this level, he is ready to face death itself without a second thought. As Assam consumes the Heart of Strength, a sudden, heavy pressure begins to radiate from his body. In an instant, his presence reaches a terrifying level of intensity. The system notification chimes once more. Our territory member, Assam, has successfully completed his advancement, increasing all of his attributes by a full 100%. He takes a quick look at Assam's newly upgraded stats before turning his gaze toward Elena with a reassuring smile. He promises Elena that if she performs well and reaches level 10, he will find a Heart of Strength for her too. He will help her break through to Tier 2. Elena thanks him for his generosity, pledging to give her all for her lord. She is clearly moved by his words. The system notes that her loyalty has increased as well, which is always a good sign. Her loyalty now stands at 85. With a smile, he turns his attention to the Icefield Druid recruitment scroll. This particular scroll allows him to summon an elite druid at level 15 to join their ranks. A level 15 elite unit is an incredibly powerful addition to any team. Then, we see him examine the other reward. It is the blueprint for a basic elemental sword tower, a defensive structure with a staggering range of 600 meters. It boasts an attack power of 213, firing once every 2.5 seconds. To be honest, this is a devastating weapon. With over 200 points of damage, it is a true force to be reckoned with. A single shot from this tower could almost instantly kill a combatant like Elena. Even the pre-advancement version of Assam, facing that 600-meter range, would have struggled to survive. He would likely be shot down before even reaching the base of the tower. Next, he turns toward the bear's massive carcass. He chooses to decompose the massive carcass, instantly obtaining over 1,000 pieces of blue-quality bear meat. Along with bear skin and gallbladders, what pleases him most is that consuming this meat for the first time actually increases both strength and constitution by 2 points each. For any warrior class, that translates to 4 points of attack and 40 health points, plus a nice little boost to secondary stats. Considering that food is currently the rarest resource for survivors, if he were to trade this, it would undoubtedly cause a frenzy and net him a massive fortune. After finishing with the loot, we see him turn toward the bear's cave. Assam immediately volunteers to head inside and scout it out first. He nods in approval, and not long after, Assam returns to report that there is no danger within. However, there are a few unusual items inside. Feeling intrigued, he steps into the depths of the cave, where he discovers, to his surprise, a small white bear cub that was born only recently. It is a juvenile snowburst bear that already commands the power of lightning. He reaches out to pet it, but is instantly shocked, losing a point of health. At that moment, the system chimes with a new prompt. It has detected a tameable wild creature, a snowburst bear cub, and asks if he wishes to recruit it. Once a wild creature is tamed, he must provide it with food and care as it grows. Only after it matures will it possess its true combat potential. He agrees, and the recruitment is a success. The system suggests he give it a name. After a moment's thought, he decides to call the little one Volibear. Liu Shui happily scoops Volibear up into her arms. He is about to warn her that the cub emits electricity, but she only laughs, noting that it isn't shocking her at all. He is left momentarily speechless. It seems this little cub is already playing favorites. Near the bear's nest, however, something else catches his eye. He spots an unlocked silver treasure chest, and for a moment, his breath hitches in anticipation. In this world, treasure chests are ranked from bronze, silver, and gold, all the way up to the elusive Bright Moon chests. The highest tier Bright Moon chests can even contain legendary equipment, and even a silver chest is a rare find. In his past life, he had to survive for 10 whole days before he finally stumbled upon one by pure luck. Finding one so early now is a massive milestone. He opens it, and the system offers its congratulations. He has obtained the Mark Robot Skill Book, a pair of black iron bracers, 5 medical kits, and other supplies. There is also a small resource pack and 5 units of mithril. He checks the skill book and is instantly overjoyed. It is a top-tier early game skill for a cold iron mechanic, and its value is truly immense. The Mark Robot skill, exclusive to his class, requires specific materials and energy to activate. To be honest, it is exactly what he needed. It allows him to summon a mark robot that inherits 120% of the survivor's own attributes. The robot lasts for 180 seconds. As for the equipment he found, it is a specialized bracer. It increases attack range, which fits his needs perfectly. After using the small resource pack, he gains a steady supply of stone, wood, and iron. The mithril, meanwhile, is a precious metal used for high-end crafting. With these riches in hand, we see him return to the territory. It is quite the haul, to say the least. He immediately sets De Zhuang and the others to work on construction and gathering. Efficiency is key, after all. Later, he and Liu Mushui head to the cabin. Ever since he helped her deal with the situation regarding her parents, their relationship has grown much closer. However, after a brief moment of tension, things go no further. He decides to clear his head and heads over to the market interface, preparing to sell off some of his surplus. Territory development comes first, after all. He opens the world channel, which is filled with the usual chatter. However, some players are sharing warnings about a group of brutal, masked individuals they encountered. They warn others to stay far away. Suddenly, a wave of panic and commotion ripples through the chat channel. Fong Long of the Saniying Society has begun selling food again, offering 100 pieces of lean meat for 100 units of wood. Alternatively, he accepts 50 stone blocks. Weapons and equipment are limited, so anyone with extra materials is rushing to trade. While some are excited, others complain that the price is far too high. He simply shakes his head, knowing the cost is indeed steep. It is essentially enough to drain a camp's entire resource stockpile. Although the food can restore some hydration and stamina, the lack of materials will cripple future development. Not long after, he decides to list his own bear meat on the market. He breaks it down into smaller portions and labels it clearly as a tribute-enhancing meat. Of course, the materials he asks for are much cheaper than Fong Long's. Word spreads quickly as survivors tell their brothers to check the market for this special bear meat. The moment the bear meat is listed, it catches everyone's eye. A massive crowd of onlookers begins to gather around the listing. A survivor named Yang Lin is so excited he can hardly contain himself. He uses 50 stone blocks to trade for a whole piece of bear meat, enough to boost his entire family's attributes. It is a miracle, to say the least. This news sends the chat channel into a state of absolute frenzy. Someone even shares the details of the bear meat on the world channel, leaving survivors outside of District 174 feeling incredibly envious of their luck. Meanwhile, his screen is flooded with a constant stream of transaction notifications. In just a few short minutes, he has gathered 5,400 units of wood, 3,200 stone blocks, and 342 units of iron. He also gains 43 primary element crystals, a green blueprint, and 20 units of mithril. All of this cost him a total of only 215 pieces of bear meat. To be honest, he still has a full 1,000 pieces of meat left in his backpack. He is overjoyed. These materials are exactly what he needs for his camp. He can now upgrade the Vital Spirit Pearl Bonfire Hut and the Polar Dweller Huts. He can even go as far as constructing the primary elemental arrow tower, a powerful weapon that will vastly improve the territory's defensive capabilities. And so, he quickly calls De Zhuang and the others over to assign their new tasks before he briefly steps away. Once he stopped trading the bear meat, the survivors of District 174 were suddenly thrown into a state of complete panic. Some worried that he had simply run out, while others deeply regretted waiting for a price drop that never came. Seeing the chaos, one survivor mocked the crowd, calling them fools for expecting a discount on such rare meat. Items that can increase attributes are always a hard currency, and to be honest, Chaoxing's prices were already more than fair. It was Fong Long's prices that were truly extortionate, as many pointed out. Buying from him once was enough to bankrupt the camp, but this criticism quickly drew a sharp response from Fong Long himself. He claimed to be offended that anyone would call his meat expensive, acting as though he were a saint for feeding them. He argued he was sacrificing his own precious food for their sake, and suddenly, the chat channel fell into a heavy silence. Most people here were from Xiangjiang and knew all too well that the brothers of the Saniying Society were part of a notorious and dangerous gang. They were told to stay in line, as these men were not to be crossed. Fong Long demanded they recognize who the real boss of this region was, asserting his dominance over the survivors. He declared that in the future, anyone wishing to trade in this area would first need his explicit permission. Otherwise, they would face the consequences. Naturally, some found Fong Long's behavior to be far too overbearing. They questioned why he would charge so much while trying to block others from buying elsewhere, but he didn't care. He admitted they were being bullies, asking if anyone truly thought the Saniying Society was a soft target to be pushed around. He reminded everyone that hundreds of his brothers were scattered throughout this region, a chilling thought for the isolated survivors. Since they were bound to cross paths eventually, he warned them to think very carefully about the consequences of their words. One by one, other members of the Saniying Society began to jump into the chat to back Fong Long up. The other survivors watched the screen, their faces turning pale as they realized it was no longer safe to speak out. Meanwhile, Chaoxing finally finished organizing his camp's work and returned to see that Fong Long was now trying to ban all free trade. The chat channel was momentarily stunned by the sudden tension, but Chaoxing simply let out a cold, quiet laugh. He told everyone that he had only stepped away for a moment and that the trading would now continue. Fong Long was furious, asking if the boy hadn't heard him and demanding that he stop the trades immediately. He asked if Chao Xing had ever even heard of the Saniying Society, clearly expecting the name to carry weight. Chao Xing wasn't impressed, noting that this wasn't Earth anymore and there was no reason to fear their posturing. He encouraged the others not to be intimidated by these self-proclaimed tough guys and to keep trading as planned. He reminded them that his supply of bear meat was limited and would be sold on a first-come, first-served basis. Then, he added a twist. No members of the Saniying Society were allowed to trade with him at all. He told them to go beg their masters for food instead, a comment that, naturally, acted like poking a hornet's nest. The chat channel exploded instantly as the members of the Saniying Society began hurling insults at him. Chao Xing, however, remained calm, carefully noting down the names and ID numbers of every person who cursed him. He promptly added them to his trade blacklist, just as the other survivors began to realize what was happening. Seeing the bear meat back on the market, the crowd began to openly support him against the gang's threats. On the other side of the screen, Fong Long was livid, especially when he realized his men were being blocked from buying. Every attempt they made was rejected, but then, Lu Mushua's father suddenly reached out to him with a proposal. He claimed to know Chao Xing's background and offered to cooperate, revealing that in their past life, he was just a driver. Fong Long felt an immediate sense of relief, convinced that a low-level nobody couldn't possibly be a real threat. He mocked the idea of such a person thinking they could actually move up in this new world and issued an order. He commanded every member of the Saniying Society to find the exact location of Chao Xing's camp at any cost. Meanwhile, Chao Xing was overwhelmed by a flood of trade notifications until he had successfully sold 500 pieces of meat. Chao Xing then addressed the crowd, explaining that his supply of bear meat was nearly exhausted and large-scale trading would have to end. However, he invited anyone who had found interesting items, like blueprints, equipment, or skill books, to contact him privately. He was still willing to trade for those, a statement that immediately reignited hope in the hearts of the survivors who had missed out. We see him turn his attention back to his territory's resource stockpile, which had grown to a truly staggering amount. To be honest, the sheer volume of materials he had gathered was nothing short of terrifying. It was a hoard that would have normally taken him 20 days to accumulate back when he played this as a simple mobile game. At that moment, Lu Mushue spoke up to offer a word of caution, calling out to him softly. She warned him that she had dealt with Fong Long before and knew exactly what kind of man he was. He was a sinister, petty individual who wouldn't hesitate to use the most ruthless methods to get what he wanted. She urged him to be careful, and while he nodded in acknowledgement, deep down, he wasn't worried in the slightest. At this stage, player conflict usually meant finding an opponent's camp and launching an all-out assault. But since most survivors were only at level 1 or 2, the idea of them trekking dozens of kilometers through the wilderness was absurd. It was highly unlikely they could travel 100 kilometers just to cause him trouble, but even if they dared to try, a level 5 Elena and a level 10 Twin Wolf Knight would be enough to utterly crush any intruders. And that wasn't even counting the Icefield Druid he still had tucked away, waiting to be summoned. Most importantly, he was about to construct a devastating new weapon, the basic elemental arrow tower. With that in place, it wouldn't matter if Fong Long brought the entire Saniying Society. They would simply be walking into a slaughter. Ironically, his biggest concern wasn't the gang at all, but rather a shortage of manpower to handle his sudden wealth. He possessed a mountain of resources, yet he only had 8 tribesmen available to do the actual work. Even if they worked around the clock, they couldn't possibly turn all those materials into buildings fast enough. He knew that if he didn't turn these resources into a tactical advantage, it would be a terrible waste. Just as he was pondering this dilemma, Assam suddenly returned from his scouting mission. To our surprise, he wasn't alone. He had brought 3 women back with him to meet the Lord. Assam reported a new discovery, explaining that these women were refugees fleeing from the distant Frozen City. Frozen City was thousands of kilometers away, but it had recently fallen to a massive army of White Walkers. After a harrowing escape, they had the misfortune of running into a cultist organization along the road. Assam had stepped in to save them, but with nowhere left to go, he couldn't help but feel pity for them. He suggested to Chao Xing that since the territory desperately needed more hands, perhaps they could stay. The women pleaded with the Lord, begging him to take in those who had lost everything. They were willing to give their all in service, but Chao Xing had a more practical question. Can you cook? Since they could, he decided that the daily task of preparing meals would be their new responsibility. He immediately issued a recruitment request, and the system confirmed that the process was a success. Moli, Yujingxiang, and Lambashi officially joined the territory, bringing the population count up by 3. To make management a bit simpler, and perhaps because he liked order, he renamed them Dahua, Erhua, and Sanhua. Their stats were basic level 1, but their hunger levels were dangerously low, so he sent them to start a fire. He told them to eat something first. Since there was no canteen yet, they would have to use the stove in his cabin. After they left, he realized these new recruits would need small shelters of their own for the night. He would also need to construct a proper dining hall where all his subjects could eat together. But building and upgrading takes time, and as he watched his 8 tribesmen working, he felt the pressure. He sighed, realizing that even with the newcomers, he was still short-handed, and his mind drifted back to his gaming days. We learn that this world is populated by natives, and recruiting them usually involves one of 4 specific methods. The first is expanding the territory scale to attract nearby tribes or convince wandering refugees to join voluntarily. The second is scouting the wilderness like Assam did, where there is always a chance of bringing back new hands. Third, one could visit the cities or village taverns and pay a certain fee to hire help. This allows for recruiting NPCs with special abilities, while the fourth method is simply to declare open war. By conquering nearby tribes, one can force them to submit, though none of these methods quite fit his current situation. Just as Chao Xing was worrying about his lack of manpower, a solution presented itself from an unexpected source. After finishing their meal, Dahua and the others brought him some timely news. She explained their history. They had recently escaped from a camp belonging to a group of cruel and ruthless hunters. Many of their companions were still being held captive there, and Dahua desperately hoped he could save them. He was delighted. This was the perfect opportunity to gain more followers. He asked how many hunters there were. He needed to know their strength. She estimated about 20 to 30 men, most of whom felt familiar. In terms of power, most were roughly on the same level as the Lord himself, but they had 2 squad leaders. These leaders were slightly stronger than the Snake Woman, and they were led by a formidable captain. His aura was similar to Assam's twin wolf strength. Chao Xing nodded, calculating that there was 1 level 10 hunter. There were 2 above level 5 and 20 more below that, but he had the newly advanced Assam on his side. He also had an unrecruited level 15 elite Icefield druid. With them, victory seemed almost certain. Besides, based on his gaming experience, these hunters likely had a hidden stash of treasure. He felt a surge of anticipation. After confirming the exact location of the camp, he immediately began preparing for the upcoming battle. He started with the 2 skill books and the equipment he had acquired yesterday, beginning with the Isol technique. The first skill allows him to condense up to 3 Isols, dealing magic damage equal to 80% of his spirit attribute. There is also a 30% chance to freeze the enemy for 1 second. Next, we see the Aurora Blessing skill book. This technique condenses the power of the Aurora onto a weapon so that during close quarters combat, it deals additional light attribute damage equal to 80% of the user's spirit value. The effect lasts for 60 seconds. Chao Xing decided to learn the Ice All technique himself, which was a wise choice. He gave the Aurora Blessing to Lu Mushua, and then he finally used the Icefield Druid recruitment scroll. In an instant, a powerful pressure emerged as a voice declared that nature would guide his path. Guardian Andrew reported for duty. Upon checking Andrew's panel, he discovered the druid possessed a transformation skill called Great Bear Form. In this state, he would gain additional abilities such as Wild Roar and Ferocious Assault. The Great Bear Form lasts for 60 seconds with a 3-minute cooldown. Chao Xing nodded, feeling quite satisfied with this addition. However, he noticed that Andrew only had 63 loyalty, and there was a certain coldness in the druid's eyes. He understood that because his own strength was still relatively low, this powerful newcomer was a bit reluctant to follow him. And Andrew was indeed thinking exactly that. A weak lord could not command his full devotion or respect. But Chao Xing simply smiled and told Andrew that as a citizen of his territory, he would receive a divine blessing. Then, to Andrew's absolute shock, he began casting Ice Healing, Ice Armor, and several of Elena's blessing skills. He applied them all to Andrew and used his eternal power to turn these temporary buffs into permanent states. Feeling his power surge, and realizing it was a permanent increase, Andrew was stunned and asked the Lord what kind of blessing this was. To be honest, the sheer scale of the power increase was enough to make anyone's head spin. Chao Xing explained that this was a reward for his loyalty, a gift reserved only for those who belonged to his land. Only they could enjoy such a blessing. Deep down, Andrew's skepticism began to vanish as he addressed him as Lord. Andrew bowed deeply, declaring that such power was unlike anything he had ever seen, and thanked the Lord for the blessing. A system notification appeared, confirming that by helping Andrew increase his strength, his loyalty had surged to 74%. Chao Xing smiled, ready to lead his group to the hunter's camp, when the system suddenly chimed with a new announcement. It addressed all survivors, noting that they had now survived the 2nd day of the Ice Age. Since they had adapted to the rhythm of this world, the level rankings were about to be officially opened. The first 100 survivors in each region to reach level 10 would be recognized. We see him glance at the rewards. Those ranked from 4th to 100th would receive mostly food and basic resources. However, the top 3 prizes were far more impressive, including Tier 2 creature recruitment scrolls. There was even blue-grade equipment, but it was the reward for first place that truly made his heart race. It was a Tier 2 boss-level recruitment scroll. In this harsh world, we must remember that not all creatures are equal. Whether recruited or found in the wild, every creature is categorized by their innate potential and grade. This potential represents their raw combat strength and how much they can grow over time. The ranks range from common, elite, and leader, up to boss and commander. The higher the grade, the better. With every level gained, a higher grade creature receives significantly more attribute points. For instance, an elite creature is naturally 30% stronger than a common one, and the gap only widens as the ranks go up. The first place reward skipped the leader rank entirely, offering a boss-level scroll instead, a truly terrifying prospect. At that moment, Chao Xing made a firm decision. He would give everything he had to secure that top spot. He wasn't alone, of course. His rival Fong Long and leaders of other factions were likely harboring the exact same ambition. However, the system indicated it would be some time before the rankings were officially published. And so, suppressing his excitement, he led his team toward the hunter's camp, finally arriving at their destination. The system chimed with a warning. They had entered the hunter's camp, a special zone marked as extremely dangerous. Chao Xing didn't hesitate for a second. He knew the system's assessment of his strength didn't account for his hidden advantages. He immediately ordered Andrew and Assam to charge, and a sharp, piercing cry soon echoed through the air. Dozens of hunters armed with long spears reacted instantly, emerging from their tents to meet the intruders. We see him glance at their stats. They were merely level 3 or 4 monsters, posing no real threat to his team. Andrew lunged into the crowd, his claws dealing hundreds of damage points with every single strike. A notification appeared, confirming that Andrew had killed a hunter, earning 40 experience points for the effort. Combatants Lu Muxue and Chao Xing, along with the follower Elena, each received half that amount as shared experience. He and Muxue were effectively a team. Despite not swinging a weapon themselves, they were still gaining experience. He quickly realized why. Both of them had provided Andrew and the others with powerful status buffs. Because they were supporting the fight, the system counted them as active participants in the kill. Once he understood this, he realized just how powerful this strategy was. To be honest, it was almost unfair. As long as he recruited enough powerful followers, he could simply send them out to do the heavy lifting. He could essentially level up while sitting safely in his territory. More importantly, this changed everything. His confidence in securing the ranking rewards for himself and Muxue grew even stronger as the battle raged on. The hunters tried to fight back, but their attack seemed futile against Andrew and his companions. Green numbers floated above his team as their health regenerated faster than the hunters could deplete it. The enemies were completely stunned. They couldn't possibly keep up with that kind of healing. Then, a new figure emerged. It was the hunter captain. Chao Xing checked his stats and noticed a peculiar skill called Greased Feet. It was a movement buff for escaping, so he immediately warned Andrew not to let the captain slip away. The captain, seeing how fierce Andrew and the others were, was already entertaining the idea of making a run for it. Hearing Chao Xing's voice only made him bolt faster, but Andrew let out a thunderous roar and transformed into a giant bear. With a sudden burst of speed, he caught up to the captain and delivered a crushing blow, killing him instantly. The system immediately notified him that he had earned 150 experience points, bringing his level up to 4. At the same time, another notification appeared. He had destroyed a hunter's camp, gaining 50 points of territory prestige. Because he had completed such a high difficulty raid, the system evaluated his performance and strength. As a reward, he received a Phantom Assassin recruitment scroll, which could summon an elite-level fighter at level 20. Chao Xing was ecstatic. This was a level 20 elite assassin, even stronger than Andrew himself. After that, we see him step forward to collect the spoils of war from the battlefield. Among the loot was a hunter's mask, a piece of equipment that increases spirit stats, and a Tier 1 soldier training manual. This manual would allow him to train the ordinary people in his territory into Tier 1 soldiers with actual combat capabilities. He also found coins, the universal currency of this continent, which could be used in various towns across the world. With these, he could buy supplies or recruit more followers. Next, he decided to search the hunters' tents. Inside the first tent was a bloody sacrificial scene that nearly made him sick. These hunters were clearly lunatics. In the other tents, he gathered a fair amount of coins, food, and supplies. Then, Andrew approached him with a discovery. He had found a strange key on the captain's body, a goblin treasury key. Holding this key allowed them to travel to specific coordinates to open a goblin vault, though the system issued a warning. The area could hide special dangers, and they were advised to proceed with caution. Naturally, Chao Xing's eyes lit up. While goblins are generally considered a weak race, they are exceptionally skilled at digging and finding treasure. Because of this, goblin treasuries often contain some of the most precious items one can find. However, that location was over 40 kilometers away, and with his current mobility, it was simply too far to reach. He decided to save that for another day and move to the final tent, where the captured refugees were being held. As he scanned their names, he suddenly froze when his eyes landed on the very last one. Survivor Tong Chu Chu, level 1. She was actually a human from Blue Star, just like him. Lu Muxue immediately stepped forward to comfort her, learning that Chu Chu and her father had gone out searching for food. Unfortunately, they were ambushed by the hunters and captured, and as for Chu Chu's father, he was taken away by the hunters last night and never returned, a realization that left the poor girls sobbing uncontrollably. Chao Xing could only sigh, remembering what they had seen while raiding the camp. We recall those horrific altars piled with bodies. It was clear that Chu Chu's father was likely one of the victims. Lu Mushue turned to him then, asking if they could bring the girl back to their camp. He nodded, thinking that since the camp was finally getting on track, one more mouth to feed wouldn't hurt. Besides, this little girl was a survivor. Perhaps she might even be of help in the future. Upon learning that he was a powerful spirit lord, Chu looked at him with a mix of fear and curiosity. She then timidly asked if they could take her mother along too, as she was still all alone back at their original camp. This, however, made him hesitate. Human survivors were a complicated matter. Unlike the natives, they wouldn't necessarily remain loyal to a spirit lord. He was only willing to take the girl because she lacked combat power and posed no threat, but an adult was a different story entirely. To be safe, he opened the system interface to ask how he should handle other survivors who wanted to join his territory, and he discovered there were currently 2 ways to do so. The first option was to invite them as a fellow lord, sharing all building permissions and resources, which, naturally, was a risky move. The second option was to recruit them as subjects, allowing them to join the territory as formal residents. In this case, they would only have basic rights to live and build, and they would be strictly unable to attack any friendly units. Seeing this second method, Chao Xing felt much more at ease. By recruiting them as subjects, he wouldn't have to worry. It perfectly met his requirements for protecting the camp. He then asked Tong Chu for the location of her original home. He explained that whether they could stay would ultimately depend on her mother's own choice. Upon hearing this, Chu immediately thanked him, calling him a kind older brother. She promised to remember his kindness for the rest of her life. He then turned his gaze toward the other native survivors in the tent. He asked if they knew Molly and Sapphire, the ones who had been rescued by Assam earlier. After they confirmed they were companions, he nodded and informed them that those friends were already residents of his territory. It was actually their news that had led him here to save them, and he asked if they were willing to submit. Since their captors had already been dealt with, the survivors respectfully agreed. In total, he recruited 6 new people. There were 3 men and 3 women, but since they all had foreign names, he decided to give them new ones for simplicity. The men were named Chao Yi, Chao Air, and Chao San, while the women were called Sihua, Wuhua, and Luhua. Among them, Chao Yi possessed a natural talent for basic public speaking, allowing him to give speeches that could soothe the residents' moods. Sihua, on the other hand, came with basic cooking skills. Any food she prepared would provide an extra 20% hydration, a pleasant surprise that made his eyes light up. Additionally, in a corner of the camp, we see him discover a hunter's storage chest. Upon opening it, he obtained a good amount of white bread, wheat seeds, milk, and even metals like copper. The wheat seeds could be planted on tilled land, which meant he finally had a stable and permanent source of food. As for the copper, it was a vital metal in this world. It could be used to craft wires and lights, and was even essential for building snow robots or war machines. A vast amount would be needed. Additionally, we see him obtain a letter, a special item containing a hint. It was a letter from the Church of Light. Upon opening it, the message was addressed to all followers of the God of Light. The Lord had sent a revelation, declaring that the seed of salvation was about to appear in this world. To welcome its arrival, they planned to launch a blood sacrifice soon, calling all believers near the Ice Crystal Kingdom. They were to gather at a base near specific coordinates. Once their numbers reached a sufficient scale, they would launch an attack on Lake Dorn City, offering the voices of the entire town to the seed of salvation. A system prompt appeared, explaining that this was a quest item. He could deliver the letter to Lake Dorn City to expose the Church of Light's conspiracy in advance. After reading it, Chao Xing frowned at these marauders. The fact that they planned to attack an entire city was truly insane. As for the system's suggestion to deliver the letter, he didn't even know where this Lake Dorn City was located. Regarding that marauder gathering point, he checked the coordinates and found it was over 200 kilometers away, allowing him to finally breathe a sigh of relief. At such a distance, it likely wouldn't affect him. After burning the entire marauder camp to the ground, the group headed toward Tong Chu's campfire camp. Upon arrival, he intended to follow Chu inside, but a system prompt informed him that during the novice protection period, he could not enter another survivor's camp. After waiting helplessly for a moment, a tall woman with a mature and elegant aura walked out from within. When Xiaoyani emerged and saw so many people gathered outside her territory, her shoulders trembled in fear. Fortunately, Chu immediately explained how they had been rescued, and Yanni's eyes filled with tears as she thanked him. She was even prepared to kneel down with Chu. He told her there was no need for such formality. He explained that his territory needed hands, and if she was willing, they could return to his camp together. He offered them a deal, help build and develop the territory, and in return, he would guarantee their safety and provide food. Xiaoyani hesitated for only a moment before nodding her consent, and we see him send out the recruitment invitations to both women. The system then prompted him regarding the territory itself, and with a quick click to confirm the takeover, he obtained a legacy chest belonging to the former lord, Tong Guangrong, though it contained only 10 meager pieces of wood, along with 2 pieces of rat meat. These were the very last resources of the camp. To be honest, it was a grim sight. If he hadn't arrived, they would have either starved within 2 days or frozen to death once the wood ran out. He took a deep breath, his resolve hardening. This world was clearly full of opportunity, but it was equally full of peril. He knew he had to develop his strength and territory quickly, determined to never let his own storage chest become a legacy box. By the time they returned to his territory, the sky was already darkening. Upon seeing those familiar faces, Dahua let out a cry of surprise and rushed forward, beginning an emotional reunion with his fellow survivors. Dezhuang also stepped forward to report that the campfire upgrade had been successful. Lord Chaoxing. He added that the Lord's manor was also being upgraded at an accelerated pace. Chaoxing nodded, looking toward the camp center. The campfire had already reached level 5, which meant it could now cover a radius of 160 meters. It increased the temperature by 10 to 20 degrees Celsius, and under the steady heat of the flames, the ground previously buried under ice and snow began to reveal itself. It is only on this cleared ground that more buildings can be constructed and various crops can be planted. Thus, the level of the campfire ultimately determines the size of one's territory. Later, when the campfire evolves into a massive power tower, its heating range could potentially cover the area of an entire city. And so, the survivors, by constantly constructing buildings and developing their land, might one day truly possess a city of their own. He gave a word of praise before sending Dezhuang, Wuzhuang, and Luzhuang back out to gather more resources. He instructed them to focus on mining that coal deposit, as the upgraded campfire would now consume a significant amount of fuel. We see that ensuring the camp's warmth was his priority, so he called Erzhuang over to give further orders. He told Erzhuang to take Qizhuang and Bazhuang to quickly build more small shelters and a cafeteria. The goal was to finish before dark, so the new members had a place to eat and sleep. As for Sanzhuang and Xizhuang, he only required the two of them to construct a basic elemental tower before nightfall. A simple enough task, one would hope. By this time, the group of newly joined humans had finished their emotional reunion and were looking around. As they watched the laborers working in the camp, the eyes of the elder, Chao Yi, flickered with a quiet realization. Chao Yi led the other refugees toward him and addressed him respectfully as Lord Chaoxing. They asked for tasks to perform, but he told them there was no rush, knowing they hadn't eaten in days. He insisted they fill their stomachs before starting any work. The new subjects looked at each other in stunned silence. We can see the surprise and relief in their eyes. To be honest, it was likely the first time they had encountered a lord who showed such genuine consideration. Since the cafeteria wasn't ready, he offered them bread to make do for now. Lu Muxue immediately took a dozen loaves of bread from the territory's resources and distributed them to the new members. Each person received 2 pieces. As Chao Yi and Si Hua accepted the food, their eyes filled with deep gratitude. Their loyalty levels surged significantly in that moment. Meanwhile, Tong Chuchu and Xia Yani stood nearby, watching the white bread in the villagers' hands and swallowing hard. They had been hungry for quite some time. They were equally desperate for food, though they tried to remain composed. He then took 4 pieces of bread from the storage and handed them to Xia Yani, telling her to eat. She bowed her head slightly and thanked him for the kindness. He then turned his attention back to Chao Yi, placing the group of refugees under the elder's direct command. Their upcoming tasks would be to continue upgrading the campfire and gathering more essential resources for the territory. He ordered them to gather 10 units of wood first, and once they had extra hands available, to assist Dezhuang and the others. They were to help construct several basic buildings. Chao Yi nodded in agreement, and we see Chao Xing handing the wheat seeds to Si Hua. He instructed her to take someone to find a spot near the territory to clear a field and plant this batch of wheat. She promised to successfully grow high-quality wheat, assuring her lord that she would complete the task he had assigned. Watching the bustling scene within the territory, he nodded with a sense of deep satisfaction. From a single small campfire, he now had many subjects and an increasing number of buildings. This, he realized, was the true joy of building a home from nothing. Suddenly, a thought occurred to him, and he asked the group if anyone among them knew how to sew clothes. He and Lu Muxue still hadn't processed the wolf skins they acquired earlier, meaning their cold protection wasn't as effective as it could be. Now that the tailor shop was built, it needed someone to work inside. Naturally, someone with sewing skills would be able to speed up the production of clothing significantly. The villagers looked at one another in silence. Most of them shook their heads, but just then, Xia Yani spoke up, saying she could do it. Back at home, she often did handicraft work to help support her family. Tong Chuchu added that her mother's skills were excellent and her clothes were beautiful. He nodded and handed the wolf skins to Xia Yani, asking her to transform these 2 hides into proper garments. He suggested using any leftover pieces to see if she could make hats or gloves. A practical request, to be sure. She confirmed it was possible, noting the high quality of the skins, and asked if she could deliver them by tomorrow. He agreed. Xia Yani felt a wave of relief before taking her daughter into the tailor shop. By now, the sky was growing dim. Nightfall was fast approaching. In this world, the hours of darkness seemed to occupy the vast majority of the day. With less than 10 hours of daylight available, he and Lu Muxue decided to return directly to the Lord's cabin to rest. And so, the second day since humanity's arrival in this strange world was drawing to a close. Driven by the pressure of the level rankings, a great number of survivors had finally attempted to venture out into the snow today. Whether they were traveling with family or venturing out alone, we see them cautiously exploring the areas near their camps. Most had managed to find some success, but in a quiet corner of District 174, things were far more intense. Fong Long, wielding a common black iron sword, struck down a beast with a single blow. And then, right before our eyes, the white light of a level up enveloped him. He felt a surge of relief, having finally reached level 3 before nightfall. Ever since the rankings opened, he had been tirelessly hunting isolated, low-level beasts to gain an edge. He was certain that no one could possibly be faster than him. Meanwhile, we find a middle-aged man with a rugged face. He drew back a longbow made of sandalwood with practiced ease and released a single, lethal arrow. The shot instantly killed a stray roe deer. This man was Zhou Bo, the leader of the Heaven Sword Society. Soon after, Zhou Bo received a message from one of his subordinates. The scout had finished mapping the coordinates of their members. It turned out that within a 30-kilometer radius of his camp, 2 other members had established their own bases. If they spent today developing their resources, they would likely be able to reach his location by tomorrow. A cold, confident smile spread across Zhou Bo's face. To him, this was excellent news. He told himself that once those 2 arrived, they could form a team to hunt monsters together. Their leveling efficiency would skyrocket, leaving everyone else in the dust. A classic power move, really. He was convinced that soon, people like Fong Long and Wu Xinghu would be nothing more than stepping stones beneath his feet. As the day wound down, a vast number of survivors ended their explorations and began retreating to the safety of their camps. Our story returns to the chat channel, which was gradually becoming lively again as people shared their experiences. Many were discovering that coordinating with family members made dealing with low-level monsters surprisingly manageable. They had already secured a decent supply of food, though others were far less fortunate in their travels. Some complained that they hadn't gone far before encountering high-level frost beasts, leaving them battered and feeling utterly cursed. At that very moment, a countdown appeared as the system announced that the level rankings were being calculated. In 3 minutes, the survivor rankings for each district would be revealed. We see that everyone would be able to check their own level and relative standing, with the list refreshing in real time. A digital race, essentially. Suddenly, everyone's spirits lifted, and they couldn't help but wonder who the highest-ranking person would be. Someone suggested it had to be Wu Xinghu, the leader of the Tiger Hall, since he had already reached level 3. However, others immediately brought up Zhou Bo and Fong Long, who had also reached level 3. The competition was tight. While many were still reeling from the shock, the system notified them that the level rankings were finally updated. But the rankings at the very top were about to defy everyone's expectations. Upon seeing the names on this ranking list, the entire chat channel for District 174 fell into a momentary, stunned silence. Then came a flood of messages across the screen. The first place actually belonged to the powerhouse, Chao Xian. He truly lived up to his reputation as the man who killed the bear. Meanwhile, Fong Long and Zhou Bo looked visibly upset. Fong Long cursed under his breath, unable to believe that this kid had somehow managed to take the top spot. On the other side, a smile of genuine interest appeared on Zhou Bo's face. He found the situation quite intriguing. He had initially thought the boy was just lucky and was finished after offending Fong Long. He was wrong, of course. Now it seemed the boy actually had some skill. Zhou Bo opened his friend list and sent a private message to a subordinate. He ordered them to use their network to investigate this Chao Xian's background. Meanwhile, back at the Lord's cabin, Lu Muxua looked at Chao Xian with excitement in her eyes and told him he had secured the #1 spot. She thought he was incredible. He simply smiled, telling her they would have to keep working hard the next day. He wanted to see if he could earn her a top 10 reward as well. Early the next morning, he received a system notification. The basic elemental arrow tower had been successfully built, and there, right at the edge of the camp's bonfire, a 15-meter-high hexagonal tower had appeared. If any enemy dared to approach within 600 meters of the camp, this arrow tower would automatically launch an attack. It was incredibly powerful. Just then, a knock sounded at the door. Sihua walked in with a smile, carrying a bowl of bear gall soup and a serving of roasted bear meat. She explained that both ingredients had been prepared exactly as he requested. Seeing this, Chao Xian's eyes lit up. The bear gall could directly increase health by 200 points, while the meat added 2 points to strength and constitution. These were significant upgrades, to be sure. He took a bite of the bear meat without wasting a single moment. The system immediately notified him of the stat increases. As for the bear gall, however, things were a bit strange. Even after several mouthfuls, he hadn't received any system notification regarding a stat boost. A bit concerning, really. It wasn't until he had finished half of it that the system finally announced the bear gall consumption was a success. His maximum health increased by 200 points. It turned out he needed to eat at least half of the gall to actually trigger the attribute bonus. It seemed the remaining half could provide yet another boost. And so, he gave the rest to Lu Muxua. It was a bit of a shame, though, as this type of food only provides its special effect the very first time it is consumed. Then, the system spoke again. It congratulated the survivors for making it through the 3rd night of the frozen era. A small victory, in a way. The remaining time for the novice protection period was now down to 2 days and 22 hours. Furthermore, a light snowfall was expected tonight, with temperatures dropping to a staggering -70 degrees Celsius. The system warned everyone to stay warm. Lu Mushua looked at him, asking if it would really snow tonight. He confirmed it would, though he felt relieved it wasn't a full-blown blizzard. That would have been far worse. With the current facilities in their territory, he was confident they could weather the storm. Deep down, he felt prepared. He then pushed open the door of the Lord's cabin, where the local gatherers and the new residents were waiting. They were all waiting there for him, and as soon as he stepped out, they greeted him in unison, wishing their lord a good morning. The residents were full of enthusiasm, eagerly asking him to assign them their tasks for the day. A refreshing sight, to be sure. Before arriving here, they had lived lives of constant hunger, but after just one day in Chao Xian's territory, everything had changed. They could see the bright future of this land, and as a result, they cherished this opportunity more than anything else. He nodded in approval, instructing them to continue the work he had assigned yesterday. Consistency, after all, is key to survival. Their goal was to gather even more resources to upgrade the central bonfire and the Lord's cabin as quickly as possible. He encouraged them to build a prosperous territory together, and they responded with a firm, respectful salute. Our leader was pleased. Just then, Xiaoyani and Tong Chuchu stepped forward, each of them cradling a set of thick, heavy clothing in their arms. Xiaoyani spoke cautiously, informing him that the clothes were finished. To be honest, as a person from the modern world, she still seemed a bit uncomfortable using such formal titles. He thanked her for her hard work and took the garments. We see that she had crafted a finely sewn wolfskin coat and a matching wolfskin hat. Quite the stylish winter ensemble. Although these two items didn't provide any special stat bonuses, they were excellent for keeping the biting cold at bay. He noticed the dark circles under Xiaoyani's eyes and realized she must have stayed up all night working on them. In return, he handed her 2 pieces of bear meat and a bottle of milk. She was stunned by his generosity. She asked if such precious food was really for her. He told her that since Chuchu was still young, she needed the nutrition. Xiaoyani's eyes grew red with emotion as she nodded solemnly, thanking him over and over again for his kindness. Little Tong Chuchu also chirped a happy thank you to her big brother. With the morning task settled, he called Assam over. He wanted to know if, during yesterday's rescue of Dahua and the others, she had discovered anything else of interest. Assam handed him a simple map of the nearby resources and explained that, beyond the usual supplies, she had found something unique. She had located a mine, though it had already been taken over by a group of salt rats, which, naturally, meant trouble. Assam also mentioned hearing the distant roar of machinery nearby, a detail that immediately caught Chao Xian's attention. This suggested the mine might contain advanced technology, so he asked about the strength of those salt rats. Assam explained that while she hadn't ventured inside, salt rats were generally considered low-level creatures. Most were only at the first rank, though a few second or third rank individuals might appear occasionally. He quickly made up his mind. Since the mine wasn't far from the territory, it was worth investigating. And so, our primary objective for the day became the exploration of this mysterious salt rat mine. The goal was to raise both his and Mu Shue's levels, but he had one more thing to do before departing. He decided to use the Phantom Assassin recruitment scroll to bolster the strength of their small party. The scroll promised to summon a Phantom Assassin with the power of a level 20 elite, quite a formidable ally. When the system asked if he wished to proceed, he clicked confirm without a second thought. Immediately, a mass of black mist erupted before them, expanding with startling speed. Within seconds, the fog had swallowed the entire camp, and we can just barely see a figure moving inside. The figure gave off no presence at all, yet it filled him with an instinctive, deadly sense of danger. A moment later the mist dissipated, revealing a woman draped in a heavy black cloak. She wore tight-fitting black leather armor and a dark helmet that obscured most of her features. Only her pale blue skin and a pair of slightly flushed lips were visible beneath the visor. She spoke softly, stating that the Shadow Sanctuary required protection, and that is why she had come. The assassin, Shala, reported for duty. He nodded, welcoming her to the team. A man of few words, as always. Shala remained stoic, showing no reaction even when Lu Mushue stepped forward to offer her own gentle welcome. The assassin simply thanked the beautiful lady, pledging her service to Mu Shui as well. Our team was finally complete. Chao Xian could only roll his eyes at the blatant double standard, though he was already quite used to it. New recruits often started with a cold shoulder, so he turned his attention to Shala's specific attributes. We see that Shala possesses 3 distinct skills, the first being Formless Shadow, which blurs her physical presence. While hidden, her presence is completely masked, granting her a 30% boost to her evasion rate. Her movement speed also increases by 20% for 5 minutes. Her second skill is called Nth Liberation. This gives her a 30% chance to deal double damage, and a 15% chance to do even more. At the highest tier, there is a 5% chance to trigger a truly devastating strike. That strike deals over 400% damage. Her third skill, Shadow Body, further enhances her stealth. It adds another 15% to her evasion. Additionally, she possesses a unique assassin bond. If the party has 3 or more assassins, the trigger rate for Nth Liberation increases by 5%. With 10 assassins, that bonus doubles. Chao Xian couldn't hide the look of pure astonishment on his face. With an attack power of nearly 700, a single critical hit from Shala would be lethal. It was comparable to a shot from a Barrett sniper rifle, and with NTH Liberation, the damage was terrifying. And with his own permanent talent buffs, he knew he could push Shala's power even higher. He looked at Shala with newfound interest and asked if she was ready for a specialized enhancement. He offered to apply an assassin effect to her, but Shala didn't answer immediately. She seemed hesitant, partly because she didn't yet trust this new leader she had been assigned to. To be honest, she likely doubted that someone with his seemingly weak strength could offer her any real power. After a moment's thought, she gave a stiff nod. Without needing a word, Elena stepped forward to assist. She applied the Snakeman Berserk and Scale Armor buffs to Shala, whose body trembled from the sudden surge. She could clearly feel the immense power surging through her, and before she could even speak, Chao Xian added another layer of strength. He cast the Frost Armor technique, followed immediately by Liumu Shue's Aurora Blessing. After 5 permanent buffs were applied in rapid succession, Shala froze in place, completely overwhelmed by the sensation. Her shoulders trembled slightly. As an assassin who lived for high-stakes missions, she understood the weight of this power. Shala knew better than anyone just how terrifyingly rare and potent these permanent status effects truly were. She then brought her shadow blade to her chest and offered a respectful, formal salute to her new leader. She addressed him as her great lord, her voice filled with a newfound and genuine reverence. Shala declared her willingness to offer her absolute loyalty to him from that moment forward. And here we see a system notification. Shala's strength has increased, and her loyalty has risen accordingly. With her loyalty now at 71, Chao Xian simply smiled and gave the order for the group to move out. Their target was the Salt Rat Mine, and after an hour of travel, they finally arrived at their destination. We find them at the foot of a snow-capped mountain, standing before a dark mine entrance as the system issues a warning. This is a special zone, the Salt Rat Mine, teeming with a massive population of aggressive salt rats. The warning mentions other unique dangers as well, advising anyone who enters to proceed with extreme caution. The current danger level is listed as extreme. Another one, yes, but Chao Xian didn't seem particularly bothered by it. Compared to his time at the Predator camp, his strength had grown significantly, so he simply waved his hand forward. He led the group into the depths of the mine, with Andrew, the sturdiest of the group, taking the lead. Assam was the second to enter, while Shala vanished into the shadows the moment she stepped into the darkness. Liumu Shui held her shield high, scanning the surroundings. She knew her primary mission was to keep Chao Xian from harm. As they stepped further into the mine, they could see a few torches on the walls flickering with strange, blue flames. After taking one down, the system informs us that he has obtained a mana torch, a specialized tool for any aspiring mage. It is a low-energy lighting device, where a single mana stone can provide illumination for up to half a year. The stone can also be removed and used separately, which, to be honest, is what really caught Chao Xian's eye. In this world, many mechanical creations require power to function, and they rely entirely on these mana stones. Later on, even energy towers and other major structures will require these stones to keep the lights on. These items are as valuable as elemental crystals, so Chao Xian naturally ordered Assam and Andrew to get to work. He had them remove every single mana torch they could find, just as he noticed the iron tracks on the ground. Nearby sat several abandoned minecarts. Dismantling one would yield 8 pieces of iron for the treasury. Alternatively, they could be repaired back at the territory for 4 iron, while the tracks could be used to speed up transport. Of course, if he preferred raw materials, the tracks could simply be dismantled to gain 4 pieces of iron each. Recognizing their worth, he decided to take it all before the group continued deeper into the mine. Before long, we see dozens of creatures with rat-like heads busily mining away in the darkness. These are level 5 elemental miners, overseen by a single level 7 elemental supervisor watching their every move. The moment the supervisor spotted the intruders, he lashed his long whip through the air and let out a furious roar. He commanded his workers to eliminate the invaders, and the swarm of creatures instantly charged toward Chao Xian's group. However, the gap in power was far too wide. Andrew simply sprinted forward, sending the creatures flying like bowling pins. Assam followed suit, wielding his long sword with an effortless grace that made the battle look like a mere practice session. And we mustn't forget the cold flashes of light dancing in the shadows, striking with lethal precision every few seconds. Each strike dealt thousands of points of terrifying damage, a display of strength that was, frankly, a bit overkill for these miners. Even the elemental supervisor began to look on with pure terror as Shala and the others systematically cleared the room. Even though we were just watching, Lu Muxiue and I still gained half the experience, and a white light soon enveloped her. To our surprise, she had already reached level 3. We see a look of quiet determination on her face as she asks if she can join the fray. Chao Xian realized it was time for her to gain some real experience, and given her current defense stats, holding her own against a single elemental miner wouldn't be a problem, so he nodded and told her to be careful. Lu Muxue took a deep breath, raised her shield, and charged forward with her long sword gripped tightly. She quickly engaged one of the elemental miners, which swung its heavy iron pickaxe in response. The blow slammed into her shield, and Lu Muxue grit her teeth, bracing for an impact that never truly came. She was surprised to find the creature only dealt a measly 8 to 13 points of damage, hardly a scratch, really. And a second later, her health bar was topped off by the ice healing spell, ticking up by 10 points at a time. Realizing the elemental miner couldn't actually hurt her, Lu Muxue finally let out a sigh of relief. She recalled the combat lessons Chao Xian had given her, feeling a bit shy at the memory. But she soon found her rhythm in the heat of battle and struck out with a decisive blow. She finished off the creature herself. Meanwhile, we see Chao Xian finally raising his own staff. He began firing off ice bolts to harvest the remaining low-health miners, while the elemental supervisor, now paralyzed with fear, tried to flee deeper into the mine, but it was far too late for that. Shala flickered out of the shadows, her blade landing a critical hit that instantly emptied the supervisor's health bar. Chao Xian praised Shala for a job well done, noting that she had finally met the requirements for her next advancement. If he could just find a Tier 2 Heart of Strength, he could evolve Shala into a Tier 3 being. Her power would double instantly, but first, they began clearing the battlefield, finding some rations and scrap metal. They also found several books of chaos, which could randomly increase a friendly unit's attributes by a factor of 1.4. Additionally, we see the long whip dropped by the elemental supervisor, the elemental supervisor's lash. It came with a rather peculiar effect. Using the whip to lash a target would actually speed up their work. Specifically, it would increase the target's movement speed by 10% for the next 5 minutes. However, it also had a secondary effect called deepened pain, which increased the sensation of the strike by 10%. Chao Xian's expression turned a bit strange as he looked at it. He wondered if this, too, counted as a buff. If it worked with his hidden talent, he realized he might be able to make that speed boost permanent. And so, under the bewildered gazes of Lu Muxue and the others, he proceeded to give himself a sharp lash. After a crisp cracking sound, he sucked in a breath of cold air, feeling a sudden, sharp sting of pain. But a moment later, the system notified him that he had gained the whiplash effect, increasing his speed by 10%. The effect was meant to last 5 minutes, but then his eternal power talent activated immediately. The speed boost became a permanent buff, leaving him quite impressed that such a trick actually worked. Combined with the Snakeman Berserk skill, this meant he could provide himself and his allies with a massive advantage. He could now permanently increase movement speed by 30%, a truly significant boost for any future battles. Meanwhile, Lu Muxue and the others were completely baffled by his mix of pain and excitement, and the upright Assam stepped forward. The knight asked if his lord was alright, only for Chao Xian to ask if he could whip Assam just once. It was an incredibly strange request, to be sure, but with Assam's loyalty at a staggering 95, he wouldn't dream of refusing. He simply nodded and said that if his lord wished it, he could. Chao Xian didn't hesitate for a second. He landed a direct strike on Assam, whose stoic face crumpled slightly as he braced against the sudden pain. But soon, the knight felt a new surge of power flowing through his body and looked up in pleasant surprise. Assam marveled at the sensation, wondering if this had been his lord's brilliant intention all along. He bowed deeply, offering his sincere thanks to Chao Xian for the rather unconventional blessing. Then, with a touch of bashfulness, the knight asked if his lord could perhaps whip him a few more times. He clearly wanted to grow even stronger, but Chao Xian explained that only the first strike granted the effect. Hearing this, Assam nodded with a look of genuine disappointment, which was a bit surreal to witness. The others nearby were still lost in complete confusion until Chao Xian cleared his throat to speak. After explaining the whip's true power, he offered to grant Andrew and Shala the same blessing. And so, the sound of crisp whip cracks echoed through the mine for quite some time. With their buffs secured, they moved deeper, and Chao Xian made sure to collect every iron rail they found. He gathered over 100 meters of track before they reached a fork in the dark tunnels. The left path seemed to lead into the depths, where the faint roar of machinery could be heard. The right path, however, was sealed off with wooden planks, marking it as a forbidden zone. After a moment's thought, he had Andrew tear down the boards to see what was hidden inside. They found several overturned mine carts and/or scattered across the floor in total disarray. It seemed the elementals had encountered something so sudden they couldn't even evacuate their cargo. Suddenly, Shala spoke up from the shadows, sensing a dangerous presence lurking further within. Chao Xian frowned. If even a level 20 elite like Shala felt threatened, the danger was real. It meant a truly fearsome creature was nearby, so he sent Shala ahead to scout the area. The scout vanished into the darkness, only to reappear a minute later with a grim report. Inside was the nest of a Tier 2 monster, one whose strength rivaled Shala's own. However, with the Lord's blessing active and the combined strength of Andrew and Assam, he felt the risk was manageable. With his mind made up, Chao Xian gave the order to press forward into the unknown. As they traveled, he gathered more ore from the ground, even discovering precious mithril and magic power stones. Even Lu Mushua couldn't help but remark on how incredibly profitable this little excursion was turning out to be. The ore and mine carts alone made the trip worthwhile, and soon they reached the very depths of the passage. Here, the lights suddenly dimmed, and we see thick white cobwebs beginning to cling to the ceiling and walls. Massive webs eventually filled the entire tunnel, stretching across the path and completely blocking their way forward. At that same moment, a powerful and malevolent aura wafted toward them from the darkness of the inner cave. Chao Xian ordered Assam to clear the path, but the knight soon found that these were no ordinary spiderwebs. When Assam swung his longsword, it felt as though he were hacking into thick, stubborn jelly rather than silk. It took several heavy strikes just to clear a small patch, prompting Shala to suggest that she take the lead instead. Sure enough, with a single precise strike from her shadow blade, Shala sliced through the resilient webbing with ease. She carved a wide opening through the webs, and as they stepped deeper into the cavern, the atmosphere shifted. A system notification immediately appeared, informing Chao Xian that they had entered a special zone, the crypt spider's nest. We see the ceiling above them covered in webbing, with large white cocoons hanging like grim ornaments over their heads. On the ground lay numerous glowing spheres of various sizes, all coated in a sickly green, viscous fluid. The smaller ones were small magic spider eggs, which, to be honest, looked far more dangerous than they appeared. If broken, they would release 3 to 8 level 3 spiders, while the larger eggs contained level 15 monsters. The larger eggs would spawn 1 or 2 of these formidable creatures upon bursting, and Chao Xian took a long look around. Seeing dozens of these eggs littering the floor, he felt a genuine chill run down his spine. Just as Chao Xian thought about clearing out these magic spider eggs, the webs above their heads began to tremble violently. A terrifying figure, stretching over 5 meters in length, quickly dominated everyone's field of vision. The boss, a crypt spider, made its entrance, immediately spitting out a thick stream of silk the moment it appeared. The webbing instantly bound Andrew to the spot, but with a fierce roar, his body began to swell rapidly. He shifted directly into his great bear form and, with a powerful surge of strength, tore the webs from his body. Chao Xian immediately ordered the team to bring it down, and Andrew, now a massive bear, leaped high into the air. He lunged toward the crypt spider midair, but the creature was fast, quickly maneuvering to evade the heavy strike. This left Andrew's massive claws grasping at nothing but empty air, but right at that very moment, things changed. A cold light flew silently from the shadows as Shala's weapon, the arm of the beloved, struck the crypt spider true. The crypt spider shivered in agony, its entire body convulsing from the sudden, sharp pain of the impact. A massive damage indicator of 643 points floated above the creature's head. At the same time, Chao Xian fired 3 ice cones, and although they only dealt minor damage, they served their purpose. One of the cones triggered a freezing effect, causing the crypt spider's body to stiffen up instantly. A layer of frost quickly coated its surface, and it plummeted from the ceiling, much to Chao Xian's secret delight. He realized just how useful the ice cone skill was, as each projectile carried a 30% chance to freeze. Landing all of them almost guaranteed a brief stun, and as the spider hit the ground, we see the tide turn. Chao Xian immediately ordered the counterattack, forcing the crypt spider into a desperate, face-to-face struggle. With a single bite, the beast managed to deal over 300 points of damage to Andrew. It also inflicted a poison status that drained his health steadily, but in his great bear form, Andrew was a tank. His total health pool was nearly reaching 8,000, making him a formidable wall against such a monster. In addition to his massive health, green recovery numbers began to float steadily above Andrew's head. He simply ignored the damage, locked in a brutal melee with the crypt spider, while Assam and the frost wolves joined in. Shala also lunged forward to seize the opening, as Chao Xian ordered Andrew to keep absorbing the monster's strikes. The plan was simple. If his health dropped to half, Assam would take over. Suddenly, a flurry of damage numbers filled the air. Chao Xian took this chaotic moment to inspect the crypt spider's attributes, and what he found was concerning. He discovered the creature possessed a passive skill called Spider Terror, which was quite a nasty surprise. When the crypt spider's health falls below 30%, it prematurely hatches every single egg in the vicinity. This forces all the hatchlings to swarm their enemies at once, a situation Chao Xian realized was incredibly dangerous. He immediately ordered Assam and the frost wolves to break away from the main fight and clear out the nearby eggs first. Assam charged toward a small cluster of eggs, and with a single arrow, he began the cleanup process. Several small spiders burst out instantly, but Assam was ready, picking them off with 1 arrow each. He popped the small spiders with ease, while Chao Xian continued to gather his frost power to assist. He rained down ice orbs one after another, and to his surprise, killing these tiny spiders actually granted experience points. Given the sheer number of eggs in this cavern, he realized this was going to be a significant windfall of experience. Meanwhile, the crypt spider's health began to drain like water under the relentless assault of Andrew and Shala. Assam continued to shatter the eggs in rapid succession, with Chao Xian following close behind to deliver the finishing blows. As their experience bars began to climb rapidly, we see that the survivors in the outside world were also busy. They were engaged in a heated discussion regarding the latest updates to the level rankings. Men like Fong Long and Zhou Bo had already reached level 4, and many of their followers were whispering in the shadows. They dismissed Chao Xian as merely a lucky kid, confident now that they had several brothers teamed up together. They were convinced their boss would soon surpass him, but in the very next second, we see Chao Xian's level jump from 52% of level 4 straight to 55%, and within just a few more seconds, it had already leaped to 60%. The sheer speed of his growth left everyone utterly stunned, while back in the cavern, the battle was finally nearing its end. The crypt spider's health had plummeted, leaving it with a mere 1,203 points remaining. As Shala delivered a heavy strike, bringing it below 600, Chao Xian quickly ordered her to hold her hand. He then pulled out his 808 without a moment's hesitation, just as the crypt spider began to think it might actually survive. It attempted to leap into the air to make an escape, but he seized the perfect moment and fired a single shot. Instantly, a massive damage number of 804 floated up into the air. The system promptly announced the kill of the level 20 elite creature, the crypt spider. Due to the level gap, he earned 5 times the experience, totaling a staggering 2,500 points. The combatants, Lu Muxue, Shala, Andrew, and Elena, all shared in the victory. Assam gained 1,250 experience points, and just like that, Chao Xian's level increased once more. Now at level 5, a brilliant white light of ascension enveloped both him and Lu Muxue simultaneously. Naturally, he was delighted as he began to sort through the spoils of war. Aside from the familiar junior power stars and elemental crystals, there were several entirely new items to examine. This included a green-quality junior storage contract, a rather rare find indeed. It could be used on a wild creature to forge a bond, turning it into a dedicated personal pet. There was also an item that could be used on a follower, which seemed quite promising. The ultimate chaos essence would randomly increase a follower's attributes by 3 or 4 points. Finally, he found an elite spider soul crystal, which could be bestowed upon any follower below the 2nd rank. This item offered a high probability of evolving a creature into an elite rank, and seeing this, Chao Xian's eyes immediately lit up. He scanned his surroundings for a moment before his gaze finally settled on Assam. Currently, Assam was merely a 2nd-rank ordinary creature, but if he could be elevated to the elite rank, he would become significantly more powerful, so Chao Xian called Assam over without delay. He tossed the soul crystal directly to him, telling Assam that it was his destiny to take it. He promised it would make him much stronger, and Assam, showing no hesitation at all, accepted the gift. He absorbed the essence into his body instantly, and in the next heartbeat, Assam's entire frame suddenly went rigid. An incredibly powerful aura began to surge and rise from his body, filling the air with tension. The system then confirmed that Assam had used the crystal to successfully evolve into an elite-level creature. All of his attributes increased by 30%, and he unlocked the Frost Sword Chi skill, which condenses the power of frost. This allows him to unleash a wave of sword energy with a freezing effect, striking all enemies within a 30-meter path. It deals a massive 166% of his attack damage, which is quite a significant upgrade, to say the least. Assam himself could feel that his strength had leaped to an entirely new level. He immediately dropped to one knee, looking up at Chao Xian with an expression of profound urgency and loyalty. He expressed his deep gratitude to the Lord for the power he had been bestowed. Chao Xian simply told him it was well-deserved, as he had no intention of letting such loyalty go unrewarded. After that, he reached into his backpack once more and pulled out a junior power crystal. This particular item could be used by a lord or a summoned creature, and he glanced over at the twin wolf leader. The wolf was also a physical creature that met the advancement criteria, and if he could be raised to the 2nd rank, then every one of his subordinates, with the exception of Elena, would finally be at the 2nd rank. And so, we see Chao Xian hand the power crystal to Assam, telling him to let his mount complete its advancement as well. After all, a powerful knight requires an equally powerful steed to truly unleash his full combat potential. Assam took the crystal with trembling hands, looking at his lord with a gratitude that went far beyond words. Without a moment's delay, he turned and walked directly toward the twin wolf leader, his loyal companion. He urged the beast to accept the power bestowed by the Lord, speaking with a voice full of reverence. He vowed that together, they would defend the Lord's glory until death, and with those words, the moment arrived. Assam tossed the crystal, and the twin wolf leader swallowed it in one gulp, causing its aura to shift instantly. Its power surged at a terrifying speed, and its body grew from 3 meters to nearly 4 meters in length. Chao Xian nodded in satisfaction before turning his attention to the final reward, a blue-quality magic orb staff. This weapon features a junior magic amplification, offering a 40% chance to trigger a special effect. Beyond increasing magic damage by 10%, it also possesses a skill capable of summoning reinforcements. It can call forth level 5 to 10 magic orbs to assist in battle, which is a remarkably powerful effect, honestly. Delighted, he ordered the group to search the cave for more treasures, and a few minutes later, they found something. In a dusty corner, Sarah discovered a treasure chest, an unlocked silver chest, to be precise. Inside, they found a backpack, construction blueprints, some dry rations, and a medical kit. The noble backpack was of green quality, offering 40 slots and a passive bonus of 4 charisma points. There was also a blueprint for a medium shelter, which could comfortably house up to 6 people. It provides a recovery effect for any allies resting inside, restoring their vitality every single second. Specifically, it restores 0.5 health points per second, alongside a blueprint for crafting iron rails. These rails can be forged at a blacksmith shop using raw materials, and Chao Xian happily equipped the new backpack. We see Chao Xian turn his gaze back to the silver treasure chest, as the system asks if he wishes to dismantle it. The dismantling is a success, yielding 10 units of rice. At this point, every corner of the magic orb cave has been thoroughly picked clean, leading the group back to the original crossroads once more. This time, they head down the left-hand tunnel, traveling nearly 500 meters into the darkness. The mine shaft widens significantly before them, and suddenly, a figure nearly 2 meters tall appears. It is a creature covered entirely in iron plating, a mechanical monster, to be precise. This is a salt rat tech burrowing robot, and the moment it spots our group, it springs to life. The machine emits a mechanical whir, signaling that enemies must be cleared before charging straight at them. The newly advanced twin wolf leader takes the lead, but the burrowing robot is surprisingly formidable. A single collision nearly sends the wolf flying, draining over 100 points of its health in an instant. Its attack power is certainly nothing to scoff at, yet under the relentless assault of Chao Xian's skilled warriors, the durability of the burrowing robot is rapidly depleted until it grinds to a halt. Chao Xian approaches the scrapped machine, and the system presents him with a very interesting choice. He can either dismantle it for metal parts or use specific materials to repair the damaged unit. Once repaired, it becomes a permanent ally capable of following simple commands, a useful tool, indeed. His eyes light up, as he has already witnessed the raw power of this mechanical guardian firsthand. Furthermore, this machine can be used for mining, making it a truly versatile multifunctional robot. Having collected plenty of metal along the way, he has more than enough resources to complete the repairs. He chooses to restore it, and within moments, the previously scrapped machine begins to hum with life again. With the robot back on its feet, he takes a moment to calmly review its updated status panel. We see that its maximum speed reaches an impressive 30 kilometers per hour. Its standby energy consumption is remarkably low, lasting 30 days on a single charge, quite practical, one might say. However, just at that moment, another dangerous aura begins to approach them rapidly. Suddenly, out of the darkness, dozens of pairs of glowing red eyes appear before our group. It is a large squad of salt rat soldiers armed with spears, accompanied by 2 different models of robots. It seems they have stirred up a hornet's nest, but considering their own strength, there is little cause for alarm. Chao Xian orders Assam to stay back and protect them, while Andrew, Shala, and Lingdong charge forward to clear the path. Facing the incoming horde, Shala feels no fear. In fact, she seems quite excited by the prospect of battle. In the next heartbeat, she lunges forward, while Andrew enters his great bear form without a moment's hesitation. The twin wolf leader, Lingdong, lets out a roar, and soon a wolf, a white bear, and a dark blur crash into the salt rat army, engaging in a chaotic melee where their tier 2 strength truly shines. Against level 7 soldiers, it is a complete slaughter, and as the salt rats fall one by one, notifications for experience points begin to flood in. As for those 2 mechanical robots, they are systematically dismantled by Shala's relentless double critical strikes until they simply explode. A phantom assassin with infinite health regeneration is practically invincible, and by the time the dust settles, Chao Xian's experience bar has already climbed to 86% of level 5. Lu Muxue is equally thrilled to find that she has also reached level 5 during the skirmish. The 2 of them now firmly hold the top 2 spots on the leaderboard, while the third-place player, Zhou Bo, is still trailing behind at level 4. Naturally, the chat channel for District 174 is in an absolute frenzy. The users are terrified of Chao Xian's speed, joking that he must be leveling up on some kind of supernatural steroids. At the same time, others begin to wonder who this Lu Muxue could be, and after some discussion, they finally remember. Before the crossover, she had been featured in the fashion magazines of Xiangjiang City as one of the top 10 goddesses. One of those legendary beauties was indeed Lu Muxue. Meanwhile, Fang Long's expression turns a grim shade of ashen. He had originally planned to catch up to Chao Xian today, but now it seems the gap between them is only growing wider. Deep down, he knows that if Chao Xian maintains this momentum and secures the top spot on the level rankings, and claims that boss-level creature recruitment scroll, he will have no hope of ever defeating him. Realizing he cannot let this continue, Fang Long sends another urgent message to his subordinates. He demands to know if they have found the coordinates to Chao Xian's camp, but the reply he receives is disappointing. Currently, no one can venture too far from their own camps, making it nearly impossible to track someone down. Fong Long curses them as useless and abruptly ends the communication, feeling his frustration mount. He understands that at this stage, finding a specific camp's coordinates without the owner's cooperation is a monumental task. However, a sudden thought strikes him, a memory of a potential weakness. He recalls that Lu Mushua seems to be staying with the boy, and her family had actually contacted him just yesterday. He wonders if he can use her family as a leverage point to uncover the location of their hidden camp. The more Fong Long considers it, the more promising it seems. Apparently, Lu Mushua has been strictly controlled by her family since childhood. She was required to report her every move and was always quite obedient to her parents' wishes. Furthermore, her father, Lu Jingjie, is known to be a man driven entirely by profit and self-interest. A few extra rations of food would likely be enough to buy his loyalty. With that realization, Fong Long lets out a wicked smile. He opens his friend list and immediately initiates a call to Lu Jingjie to set his plan in motion. We return to the mine where the battle has just concluded, only for Lu Mushua to suddenly receive a video call request. Seeing that it was a call from her father, Lu Mushua looked at Chao Xian and asked softly, "Xian, my father is calling again. He left a message saying it's an emergency. Should I answer?" At this point, her trust in him far outweighed her trust in her own family. He thought for a moment and told her to answer it. He wanted to see what the man was up to, but instructed her to speak as if he wasn't there by her side. Lu Mushua nodded and connected the call. On the other end, Lu Jingjie looked at the video screen, appearing quite agitated. "Xiaoxua, you finally picked up. Child, we sent you so many messages and you didn't reply to a single one." Hearing her family trying to exert control over her again, Lu Mushua's expression turned cold. "What do you want? Just tell me directly why you're looking for me." Sensing her icy tone, Lu Jingjie realized something was wrong. He suppressed his anger and forced a smile onto his face, claiming it was nothing special. He said he just wanted to know how she was doing and, more importantly, where their camp was located. He claimed that he and her mother had been reflecting for a long time and felt deeply guilty. They admitted they had been too harsh in the past and wanted to visit her once the novice protection period ended. He spoke with such apparent sincerity, as if he truly felt remorse. Well, that would be a first. However, Lu Mushua was a clever woman and immediately sensed that something was very wrong with this sudden change of heart. She muted the audio and turned off the video feed for a moment to turn to Chao Xian. "Xian, my father suddenly asking for our coordinates is suspicious, knowing their temperaments. It is impossible for them to suddenly feel guilty toward me." Chao Xian, meanwhile, considered the current state of the world. Most survivors couldn't even venture 10 kilometers beyond their own camps at this stage. They wouldn't dream of searching for other survivor bases. And knowing Lu Mushua's father and her mother's cowardly, self-preserving nature, they certainly wouldn't take such a risk without a hidden motive. Chao Xian realized that someone else must have put Lu Jingjie up to this, hoping to use Mushua's family to fish for his camp's coordinates. These people certainly had some ideas, and as for who was pulling the strings, he already had a very good guess. It was likely one of the few people on the leaderboard competing for the top spot, with Fong Long being the prime suspect. After all, he had already clashed with the man before. A faint, intrigued smile played across his lips as he spoke. He told Mushua to give her father a specific set of coordinates, the location of the massive predator gathering site. Those creatures were currently planning a terrifying massacre. If Fong Long decided not to go, he would be lucky. But if he did show up, he would certainly get more than he bargained for. After this little interlude, we see Chao Xian approach the two destroyed robots. These machines were a silkworm combat model and a treaded model. Both robots were capable of being repaired, so he simply clicked the repair command without a second thought. The two machines stood up once again, their mechanical voices droning. "Master, please give us your orders." These robots possessed strength comparable to elite monsters of the same level, which was impressive enough on its own. When combined with his unique talent, it was a complete game-changer, significantly boosting his overall combat power for this trip. After that, he instructed the others to conduct a thorough search of the entire mine to see what else they could find. They ended up with over 1,000 pieces of ordinary iron ore and hundreds of special ores, a true harvest, to be honest. As they continued deeper into the mine, a faint light suddenly appeared in the distance before long. Passing through the light, they discovered another entrance to the mine. It was then that Assam spoke up. He had found numerous tire tracks at the entrance, suggesting the salt rats might have transported the mine or out this way. Realizing they likely couldn't catch up now, he told the group to head back. They had already gained enough for one day. However, as they were making their way back to the camp, something unexpected happened. Shala, who had been scouting the surrounding area, suddenly appeared and called out, "My lord." Up ahead, a fierce battle was unfolding as a group of marauders surrounded and attacked an icefield mammoth. The druid beside him looked on in confusion, noting that icefield mammoths are powerful creatures that usually travel in herds. Given the marauders' limited strength, he wondered how they could possibly handle such a beast, but Shala simply shook her head. It turned out to be a lone juvenile mammoth that had unfortunately fallen right into the marauders' trap. Hearing this, a flash of anger appeared in the druid's eyes as he cursed those wretched marauders. Destroying city defenses wasn't enough for them. Now they had laid their hands on the sacred mammoths as well. He felt these destroyers of nature deserved a proper punishment for their actions. And so, he pleaded with the Lord to help the poor, defenseless mammoth. Chao Xin remained calm, suggesting they should first head over to gauge the true strength of those marauders. Soon, they arrived at the edge of a massive canyon fissure, looking down from above. Several giant tree trunks, hundreds of meters long, had been laid across the canyon to serve as makeshift bridges. However, one of these tree bridges had snapped in half, suggesting some heavy creature had recently fallen through. Down at the bottom of the canyon, a mammoth with a wounded leg was struggling against iron chains wrapped around its body. A dozen marauders were working together to bind it tightly, while Chao Xin took a moment to check the creature's stats. It was a level 20, Tier 2 boss creature. At full health, it would have possessed a staggering 15,000 hit points. With its array of innate skills, it was truly terrifying, but the mammoth was currently in a very bad state. Due to the fall and the relentless siege, its health had plummeted to below 2,000. As for the enemy, there was one level 15 elite marauder and 5 Tier 2 marauders above level 10. The rest were all below level 10, a level of strength that, to be honest, didn't even catch his interest. He immediately ordered a full assault to wipe out every marauder below, just as they realized a true master had appeared. The lone elite marauder's face paled as he sensed a sudden, chilling presence tightening around the back of his neck. Without anyone noticing, Shala had slipped behind him, her shadow blade emerging with a silent, deadly grace. In an instant, a terrifying damage number of over 1,700 flashed across the screen. The elite marauder gasped in shock, his only thought being to turn and flee as fast as possible. But once Shala sets her sights on a target, escape is rarely an option. Meanwhile, Andrew and Assam were busy elsewhere. They systematically took down the remaining ordinary marauders one by one, bringing the skirmish to a very swift conclusion. Chao Xin ordered Assam and the others to clear the battlefield immediately, while signaling for Andrew to follow him. They approached the fallen icefield mammoth, and we see that the poor creature's condition was truly grim. Riddled with negative status effects and losing health rapidly, it had already reached the brink of death. With eyes full of compassion, Andrew stepped forward and gently stroked the mammoth's massive head. He then looked toward Chao Xin with a pleading gaze, silently asking if there was any way to save this noble beast. Chao Xin attempted to cast a frost heal, but a system notification promptly blocked the effort. It informed him that healing skills cannot be used on non-allied units, causing him to shake his head with a frown. He explained that his powers were restricted to his own subjects and couldn't be used to aid the mammoth. Hearing this, a flicker of pure despair crossed Andrew's face as he looked at the dying creature. Damage numbers continued to rise from the mammoth's head, and its health had already plummeted below 1,000. However, Chao Xin suddenly remembered something, a reward from when they had defeated that giant spider earlier. The system had granted him a pet contract, and he wondered if it would work on a creature as powerful as this. If the mammoth became an ally, he reasoned, then his healing spells would finally be able to take effect. He asked Andrew if it was possible to speak with the beast, and Andrew confirmed they could manage some basic communication. Chao Xin instructed him to ask if the beast was willing to become his pet and sign a contract, as that was the only way. Only then could he provide the necessary aid. Andrew hesitated, knowing the icefield mammoths were as proud as they were powerful. Very few warriors had ever managed to tame such a creature, but to keep it alive, there was no other choice. Andrew had to try his best to persuade it. He placed his bare paw gently against the mammoth's side. He began to utter a series of strange, rhythmic syllables. The mammoth struggled to turn its eyes toward them. It looked from Chao Xin to Andrew, and after a moment of visible hesitation, it finally let out a low, mournful cry. Andrew's face lit up with joy as he reported that the mammoth had agreed to become the Lord's pet. He urged Chao Xin to bring it under his command immediately so the healing could begin. Chao Xin was pleasantly surprised. A boss-tier creature and a juvenile at that, its potential was, to be honest, quite staggering. He pulled out the pet contract scroll. Normally, the success rate for such a high-level beast would be incredibly low. But since the mammoth had already given its consent and wouldn't resist, the situation was entirely different. The success rate had reached a perfect 100%. With a flicker of light, the scroll vanished as it was activated. It transformed into a sphere of pure white light that surged forward and merged into the mammoth's massive body. At that same moment, the mammoth felt a strange resonance, and a mental connection was established between it and Chao Xin. A system notification appeared, confirming the contract was a success. The icefield mammoth was now officially his pet. However, the territory population increased by 5. It seems this one creature takes up as much space as 5 people. But considering its sheer power, he quickly accepted the trade-off. He was also prompted to give his new companion a name. He decided to call it Dabai. After that, he asked Lu Mushue to cast several purifying agents on the beast. Once the negative status effects were cleared, Chao Xin cast Frost Heal himself to begin restoring Dabai's health. And so, all that remained was to wait patiently for Dabai's strength to slowly return to its former glory. Not long after, we see the mammoth's health bar steadily climbing back up past the 10,000 mark. However, once its health reached 12,000, the progress came to a sudden and unexpected halt. It turns out the poor creature was suffering from a severe fracture, which had slashed its maximum health by 20%. In this state, Dabai could barely stand and certainly couldn't walk, so Chow Xian asked Andrew to step in and help. Andrew nodded and moved behind the massive beast, lifting one of those thick legs while offering a few words of comfort. "Bear with it for a moment," he muttered, before giving the bone a sudden, violent snap that echoed through the canyon. Dabai let out a truly heart-wrenching cry of pain as a damage indicator of over 2,700 points flashed above it. But as the frost heal continued its work, the mammoth's health began to climb once more. It didn't stop until it reached its peak, at which point the great beast raised its trunk high into the air. It let out a powerful, resonant roar before lowering its head and walking submissively toward Chow Xian's side. It gently nuzzled him with its trunk, just as a system notification appeared, because he had saved Dabai's life. The mammoth's loyalty had surged to 90. Once that loyalty score reaches 100, he will have earned the creature's absolute trust, finally unlocking the ability to use it as a mount. Meanwhile, Assam returned from scouting the surrounding area to deliver his report to the group. He had surveyed both sides of the canyon, but couldn't find a single path wide enough for a mammoth to climb. The canyon was nearly 80 meters deep, with walls that were, to be honest, far too steep for comfort. While there were enough protruding rocks for a human to climb easily, we can see the problem here. Dabai's massive frame was a different story entirely, so Chow Xian decided they should head deeper into the canyon. He hoped to find a more accessible exit, especially since they only had 2 hours of daylight remaining. With night fast approaching, he instructed Sarah to head out and scout ahead on her own. She was to scout ahead and expand their search radius, and about half an hour later, Shala returned with her report. She had found a camp a kilometer away, filled with a large number of hunters and 4 second-tier powerhouses. Among those second-tier enemies, one particular presence felt exceptionally formidable to her. Its strength seemed comparable to that of the mammoth, and Chow Xian began to mentally weigh the combat power of both sides. This meant there was likely a level 20 boss-level creature lurking within that camp. Combined with 3 or 4 elite-level hunters, the two forces appeared to be quite evenly matched. However, his own team held the advantage of infinite health regeneration, and it was then that Shala added another detail. Right next to that camp, she had spotted a set of stairs enclosed by massive boulders. It was a way out of the canyon, and upon hearing this, Chow Xian immediately declared that there was no time to waste. It was time, he decided, to bring down a bit of divine judgment upon those crazed cultists. Meanwhile, we see the hunters patrolling their base suddenly catch sight of something unexpected. An armored knight riding a twin wolf appeared, accompanied by a druid running on all fours. Beside them, 3 robots were sprinting at full speed, charging directly toward the camp. After a moment of initial confusion, the hunters realized these were enemies and began to raise the alarm. Shouts echoed one after another, which is hardly surprising given that these hunters are a notorious cultist faction. Essentially, they are hated by everyone on the continent and view any living creature they encounter as a foe. Amidst the chaos, a swarm of hunters armed with weapons rushed out of their tents, just as a system notification appeared. He had discovered a special area, the Hunter Central Camp. A black-robed priest of the Church of Light was stationed there, an extremely dangerous foe that required cautious approach. This black-robed priest was undoubtedly the boss-level powerhouse that Shala had mentioned earlier. But Chow Xian didn't hesitate for a second, ordering Assam and the others to keep charging forward at full speed. Against ordinary hunters, second-tier powerhouses like Andrew were essentially taking them down with a single punch or strike. Not to mention the rock element robots, who were also rampaging through the enemy lines without any sign of stopping. The hunter's side quickly began to show signs of a total collapse, but that was when 4 figures in black cloaks appeared. These new hunters radiated an aura that was significantly more powerful than the rest as they rushed onto the field. One of them, wielding a heavy flail with a grim expression, declared he would handle the giant bear himself. He ordered his companions to pick their own targets, one for each of them, to divide and conquer. In the next moment, he accelerated instantly toward Andrew, and at the very same time, the other 3 cloaked hunters made their move as well. They engaged Assam and the 2 generations of earth-drilling robots respectively, locking them in combat. The battle suddenly reached a stalemate, and we see that Chow Xian was finally able to observe the attributes of these hunters. They were level 15, second-tier elite creatures, prompting Shala to ask if they should step in to help. Chow Xian told her there was no need, remaining perfectly calm despite the chaos unfolding before them. After all, they still had 1 trump card left that hadn't been played yet. He then turned to Dabai and gave the simple command, "Go." With a terrifying roar in the next second, Dabai charged headlong into the battlefield with overwhelming force. He instantly sent every hunter in his path flying, but right at that moment, things took a turn. Another dark shadow darted out from the camp with incredible speed. This newcomer was moving even faster than Shala, which is quite an impressive feat, to be honest. The figure suddenly appeared behind Dabai, the cold glint of a blade flashing through the air. The strike was devastating, instantly draining over 1,000 health points from Dabai. Roaring in pain, Dabai immediately swung his massive trunk around to retaliate. However, the mysterious attacker simply flickered out of the way with a nimble dodge. And this is where we finally get a clear look at exactly who this person is. It was a man dressed in long black robes, his face hidden behind a cold mask. His status panel identified him as a hunter black-robed priest. He was a level 20, second-tier boss-level combatant, a formidable foe, to be sure. At that moment, the priest lunged at Dabai once again with relentless speed. Relying on his ethereal movement, he was actually managing to completely suppress the giant elephant. Lu Mushua worried that Dabai couldn't win, but Chao Xian told her there was no need to fret. Dabai would have some help very soon. After all, by now, Shala had already dealt with all the other enemies in total silence. Following Chao Xian's command, she moved like a shadow straight toward the black-robed priest. As her shadow blade swept through the air, the priest felt a sudden chill and his expression darkened. At the critical moment, he spun around with incredible reflexes to block the strike. The sound of clashing metal rang out as he realized Shala's strength was nearly equal to his own. The priest couldn't help but exclaim in surprise that another master had appeared. Shala said nothing, simply swinging her daggers once more with lethal intent. In an instant, the two high-level assassins engaged in a frantic, close-quarters struggle. However, because Shala's attributes were still a bit lower than the priest's, she was soon being pushed back. But before the black-robed priest could even celebrate, Dabai saw his opening from behind. With a powerful strike, the elephant sent him flying, just as the crawler and bucket robots joined the fray. With their combined strength, the four hunter elites were quickly taken out of the picture. Seeing the tide turn, Chao Xian immediately ordered Assam and the others to go and assist Shala. On the other side of the clearing, the black-robed priest's expression grew even darker. He was already finding it difficult enough to deal with these two powerful creatures at once. Now that several more formidable opponents were rushing toward him, he realized he simply couldn't win. He wondered where these masters had come from and how they had managed to find his camp. The priest was already planning his escape, but every time he tried to pull away, Shala would stick to him like a relentless shadow, cutting off any hope of a clean retreat. To make matters worse, Dabai's devastating attacks continued to rain down on him one after another. In his desperation, he spat out a curse, claiming he would remember all of their faces. He vowed that once he escaped, he would report this to his leader and ensure they were hunted. They would face the endless pursuit of the Church of Light across the entire Gale snowfield. As he finished speaking, a spherical orb suddenly appeared in his hand, which he hurled to the ground. A thick cloud of smoke billowed up instantly, and his figure vanished from the spot. By the time he reappeared, he had already put a significant distance between himself and the group. Watching this, Chao Xian only gave a cold laugh, as if he found the escape attempt quite amusing. He produced his long-barreled Barrett, and in an instant, the thunderous crack of a gunshot echoed out. A massive 874 points of damage flashed above the black-robed priest as the bullet found its mark. As it turned out, this single strike also triggered a devastating armor-piercing effect. The hunter leader, who had been sprinting for his life, suddenly felt his body give out. He turned back with a look of pure disbelief in his eyes before collapsing right there. The system announced the successful kill of the black-robed priest, a feat of slaying a higher-level foe. This earned Chao Xian 4,800 experience points, bringing him up to level 7. From the fallen priest, he gathered the spoils of war, the soul of a strong leader. He also found the blue-tier silent thorn and a 9-tube construction blueprint. Congratulations are in order. It seems he was the very first survivor on the entire server to take down a boss-level creature. For this first kill, he received the double-action magic shield skill book for destroying a medium hunter camp. With 200 reputation points gained, one can only say that this was a truly massive haul. We see him first check that purple glow in his backpack, the soul of a strong leader. This rare item could be used on any elite rank follower below the second tier. It offered a high chance, anywhere from 50 to 80%, to evolve them into a boss-tier creature. A look of pure, unbridled joy spread across Chao Xian's face at the discovery. To think, he actually had the power to evolve an elite creature into a true boss. Moving from elite to boss rank doesn't just boost every single attribute. It also allows them to learn a brand new skill, a massive leap in quality, to be honest. Looking around, he saw that Assam, Andrew, and Shala all met the requirements for the upgrade. The members of his territory could also sense the magical power radiating from that soul. They knew it could help them reach a higher level, and a look of deep longing appeared in their eyes. Even the usually cold and distant Shala couldn't help but fix her gaze on him, lost in thought for a moment. Without a word, Chao Xian tossed the glowing soul directly to Shala. Shala caught it in a daze, looking at him with pure disbelief as she asked if he was truly giving it to her. He simply nodded, knowing that at this stage, Shala was the most suitable candidate for such a power. Becoming a boss would grant her already formidable combat strength a massive boost, so he gave his blessing. He told her to use it, hoping she would become the ultimate assassin and restore the glory of the Shadow Hall. Shala's breathing quickened as she took the soul, and the moment she touched the fragment, It merged directly into her body. Meanwhile, the system announced that his generosity had deeply moved her. The mission to win over his territory member was a success, and Shala's loyalty began to climb. Her loyalty reached 91 points, a result that left Chao Xian feeling quite satisfied, to be honest. At 91, her loyalty was nearing the realm of absolute devotion, the kind where one forgets their own safety. Soon, Shala would be willing to lay down her life for him, while waiting for her transformation to finish. He turned his attention to the second purple item, the reward the system granted for his first kill. It was the double-action magic shield skill book, which applies a protective barrier to oneself or an ally. This shield reduces incoming damage by 20% while constantly affecting nearby enemies every second. It releases a frost breath that deals mental attribute ice damage to anyone standing too close. It also slows their movement and attack speed by 20%, with the effect lasting for a full 60 seconds. The shield can be toggled on or off at will. Once again, he was pleasantly surprised by what he found. This was a powerful skill that combined damage reduction and crowd control, so he learned it immediately. He then cast the skill on himself to test it out, and the system immediately flashed a notification. His eternal power talent activated immediately, turning the newly acquired skill into a permanent state. At the same time, we see that Shala has finally completed her own transformation nearby. A system notification confirmed that Shala had successfully evolved into a boss-level creature. All of her attributes increased by 30%, and she mastered a new skill called 5 Light Flash. This skill allows her to dash forward at extreme speeds, covering a significant distance in an instant. It deals 110% cutting damage to any enemies caught in her path. Chao Xian nodded with satisfaction and ordered his team to search the camp for every scrap of supplies. As they prepared to head back, they gathered plenty of money, food, and even some wine. Eventually, we follow him to the very last building left in the camp. This was the same place the black-robed priest had emerged from, and inside, a fireplace was still burning. Beside it sat a small wooden table, and resting on top was a yellowed parchment map. He picked it up, and the system identified it as a map of the Gale snowfield. He spread it out. Various symbols immediately appeared across the surface, marking rivers, mountains, beasts, and even towns. In the upper left corner of the map, there was a prominent icon for a large city. It was labeled as Lake Dorn City, and he realized that was exactly where he needed to go. However, he soon discovered that the city was over 1,000 kilometers away from his current position. It seemed his delivery mission wouldn't be finished anytime soon. But besides these icons, the map was also dotted with several sun symbols, one of which marked their exact current location. He began to suspect that these marks represented the locations of other wanderer camps. If so, this map had just revealed the hidden nests of every wanderer across the entire Gale snowfield. With everything marked so clearly, Chao Xian immediately understood the immense value of this map. As we saw from the previous battle, the benefits of such knowledge were quite clear. Destroying these wanderer camps provides not only rewards, but also valuable reputation points. Mastering these locations was, without a doubt, the key to unlocking a massive fortune. He happened to have a tavern blueprint in hand, and once that building was finally constructed, he would need a high reputation to attract powerful followers to his side. If his reputation ever ran low, he could simply visit a few wanderer camps to farm more. Meanwhile, Lu Muxue discovered a treasure chest in the corner filled with various foods. Inside were a basic sentry tower blueprint, a courage blessing skill book, and a black diamond. He examined the skill book's attributes, which allowed the user to condense the power of the aurora. By channeling this light, it increases the spirit stats of all nearby allies within a certain range. This grants a physical and magic attack boost of 1.5 times, lasting for 90 seconds. He was stunned, realizing this was one of the legendary support skills for an early-stage Aurora Knight. Although Lu Muxue's current spirit power wasn't high enough to make the boost truly overwhelming, he knew that once she leveled up and increased her spirit attributes, a single blessing from her would cause the entire team's attack power to skyrocket. And so, he handed the skill book directly to Lu Muxue so she could learn it immediately. As for that black diamond, it was a rare material that adds 20 points of charm when socketed. Such items are incredibly rare and beloved by nobles, often sparking fierce bidding wars at auctions. It could fetch an incredibly high price, and his eyes lit up at the sight of such a find. After tucking the black diamond safely into his bag, we see that every last scrap of loot in the camp has been claimed. It was, by all accounts, a massive harvest. With the spoils secured, Chao Xian led the group out of the camp. As they began the journey back along the perimeter, snowflakes unexpectedly began to drift down from the sky. The world before them turned into a vast, white haze, but fortunately, the system's minimap kept them on track. He successfully guided everyone back toward their base, where a large bonfire could be seen flickering in the distance. The flames roared with life, and as the snowflakes drifted near the warmth of the fire, they melted away almost instantly. Compared to the frozen white wasteland outside, the camp felt like a world of its own, isolated from the ice. Lu Muxue turned to him and spoke. She noted that their territory had expanded quite a bit, and it seemed several new buildings had appeared. She looked rather excited. After all, this was the home she and Chao Xian were building together. He nodded, noticing the territory had indeed grown significantly. It meant De Zhuang and the others had upgraded the bonfire by at least 2 levels while they were away. Even a blacksmith shop and a canteen had been fully constructed. Upon entering, he first checked in with De Zhuang. He asked if anything notable had happened during his absence, and De Zhuang reported that everything was normal. A few frost goblins had tried to attack at noon, but Elena and the powerful elemental towers made short work of them. The goblins had even dropped a few items, which De Zhuang now handed over, a handful of small stones. He took them and saw they were 4 ice crystals, rare stones dropped only by certain frost element monsters. They radiated an intense, chilling aura and were essential for constructing certain specialized buildings. Their uses were quite broad, and he pocketed them with a satisfied smile. There was still some time before total darkness fell. He decided to use those remaining hours to build a shelter for the mammoth and a place for the robots to escape the snow. Next, we see Chao Xian pull out the blueprint for a medium-sized shelter and learn its secrets with a single click. He then ordered De Zhuang and 3 others to construct 2 of these shelters before total darkness fell. At this point, he still held 2 more blueprints in his hands, one for a tavern and another for a basic watchtower. Once the tavern is built and their reputation reaches a certain level, it will surely catch the eye of travelers. He reminded De Zhuang once more of the plan, emphasizing the importance of their growing fame. Indeed, a high enough reputation would eventually attract special heroes to their territory, a very promising prospect. The tavern would require a bartender and a mixologist, while the watchtower blueprint offered a different kind of utility. Building a watchtower would allow them to monitor the security of the territory's perimeter much more effectively. Citizens with ranged attacks could strike from the tower, though he currently lacked any dedicated long-range forces. Since there was no rush for the tower, he instructed Wu Zhuang to lead a team in upgrading the small shelters. The goal was to turn them all into medium shelters. If they couldn't finish today, they would simply continue tomorrow. He told Qi Zhuang and Ba Zhuang to keep building elemental towers tomorrow, aiming for 2 more in a single day. After making these arrangements, he took a moment to check the attributes of the Great Bonfire. At level 7, it could raise the temperature by 10 to 20 degrees Celsius within a 300-meter radius. He noted that after level 5, each upgrade increased the heating range by another 100 meters. Once it reached level 11, it would transform into a furnace, and the heating range would undergo a massive qualitative change. Thinking of the future, he called over Chao Yi and the other humans to assign them their own specific tasks. Their mission was to focus on upgrading the camp's bonfire and constructing 2 of the basic watchtowers. The tavern was also put into production, and he handed over all the harvested food and seasonings to Dehua. As he spoke, Dehua's eyes lit up at the sight of so many rare and precious ingredients. With a respectful nod, Dehua immediately gathered the jars and bottles, carrying them into the canteen as if they were priceless treasures. Soon, everyone was busy preparing for the cold, leaving only Xia Yani, Tong Chuchu, and Elena standing there with Chao Xian. Looking a bit uneasy, Xia Yani stepped forward and asked if there was anything specific they should be doing to help. Chao Xian looked at their thin, tattered clothing and realized they were completely unprepared for the plummeting temperatures. He reached into his backpack, pulled out a complete bear skin he had harvested earlier, and showed it to her. He asked if this single hide would be enough to make 2 sets of clothes, and Xia Yani gave a soft, hopeful nod. With a smile, he handed it over, telling her to use it to make warm outfits for herself and young Tong Chuchu. He warned her that the temperature would drop tonight, and he didn't want them freezing, a gesture that left Xia Yani stunned. She had assumed he wanted her to sew something for the camp, perhaps blankets or a heavy coat for himself. To hear that the materials were for her and her daughter brought a sudden, uncontrollable shimmer of tears to her eyes. Ever since arriving in this harsh world, she had lived in a constant state of fear and trembling. The relentless cold and hunger had been eroding her spirit, and the weight of losing loved ones had been almost too much to bear. In fact, she hadn't even had time to properly grieve, fully expecting that she and her daughter would simply perish in the snow. Meeting Chao Xian had changed everything. He hadn't just provided a warm shelter and food, but a sense of genuine safety. Now, receiving these warm clothes moved her deeply, though she quickly composed herself to show her gratitude. After she offered a solemn thank you, Chao Xian told them both to head inside and stay warm for the time being. As night finally fell over the camp, Dehua and the others finished preparing a massive dinner for everyone. Our weary citizens gathered in the canteen, their eyes wide as they looked at the feast waiting for them. For many, this was one of the few true banquets they had ever seen, featuring bread, cheese, and fresh milk. There was even meat on the table, and as they began to eat, the sheer joy of the meal was evident on every face. As they ate, their loyalty to him surged significantly, while Chao Xian, having finished his own meal, opened the World Chat channel. We see him checking on the progress of other survivors, noting that many have finally begun to adapt to this harsh new world. The chat was a flurry of activity, with people seeking traits and discussing various strategies for survival. However, the most common complaint was how difficult it was to level up, leaving many wondering how those on the leaderboard did it. Many pointed out that the great Chao Xin was truly a beast, having somehow reached level 7 in a single day. It seemed to most players that the top spot belonged to Chao Xin alone, and many voices rose in agreement. But not everyone was a fan. A player named Fu Yu mocked the sentiment, noting that monsters were only getting stronger. He suggested that if Chao Xin met with a sudden accident, all that progress would be for nothing. A charming thought, really. Seeing this sarcasm from a member of the Three Eagles Guild, another player named Ji Xinyue immediately fired back with fury. She called them out for resorting to curses in the chat just because they couldn't win through honest competition. To be honest, it was quite embarrassing to watch the Three Eagles Guild members barking so loudly. Aside from Fong Long, not a single one of them had even cracked the top 10, which was frankly laughable. She reminded them that Chao Xin was right to call them the Three Birds Guild instead. The guild members, feeling insulted, snapped back, calling the others a mere rabble and asking if they had a death wish. They warned that the novice protection period would end in 2 days, asking if anyone really dared to oppose them. The other players simply laughed at this. After all, the old world's order had collapsed the moment they arrived here. In this world, power belongs to those with the strongest fists and the most developed territories. They wondered if a few hundred members of the Three Eagles Guild really thought they could take on everyone in District 174. The backlash was so intense that Fu Yu couldn't even get a word in, a situation that Fong Long soon noticed. Realizing the reputation of the Three Eagles Guild was at stake, he began to make his own voice heard in the chaos. His gaze gradually turned ice-cold as he realized the root of all these problems. Everything had started because of Chao Xin, and he was certain that only by eliminating him could the Three Eagles Guild restore its former prestige. Meanwhile, a player named Ji Jun sent a message to Fong Long, reporting that he had reached the coordinates provided and gathered all the available brothers, totaling about 30 people in that area. He believed this was more than enough to handle one man, but Fong Long simply nodded and added a warning. He noted that since Chao Xin had reached level 7, he must possess some genuine skill. To be safe, he instructed Ji Jun to continue gathering more brothers the following day. They would wait until their numbers reached at least 50 before making their move. Furthermore, since the novice protection period was still active, they couldn't enter another's territory. The plan was to observe and wait for the moment Chao Xin stepped outside his boundaries. Then, they would strike all at once to finish him off. Fong Long finished the orders with a cold, cruel smile. He told himself to let Chao Xin enjoy one last day of arrogance before showing him the consequences of offending the Three Eagles Guild. At this moment, Chao Xin had no idea that Fong Long was already acting. He was busy planning his next move, but had he known their scheme, he likely would have died laughing. Because in reality, no matter how many people they sent to that place, only death awaited them. On the other side of the screen, while browsing the regional channel, he received a private message from Ding Liang. The survivor greeted him respectfully, addressing him as the great boss Chao Xin. The man asked if he still had that mechanic skill book and if he was looking to trade it for another class. He paused for a moment, remembering that he had indeed listed a book on the market before setting out. He confirmed it was a mechanic skill book, adding that he was looking for a knight or frost-type skill in exchange. Ding Liang quickly replied that he happened to have a frost mage skill book right there. We see the details of the book. It was a skill to summon frost spirits. It allowed the user to summon 2 frost spirits that inherited 80% of the survivor's attributes to assist in battle. These spirits possessed skills like Frost Shell and Ice Sword, a summoning spell for the path of the sword, interestingly enough. Deep down, he realized that combining this skill with his Demon Lord staff would allow him to summon 7 creatures at once. Having that many summons to assist in combat would be, to put it mildly, incredibly powerful. And so, he nodded and proceeded to trade the Mark Robot skill book with the other man. The transaction was smoother than expected, and Ding Liang, who had been quite nervous, finally felt his heart relax. He hadn't expected such a famous figure to be so easy to talk to, which was a pleasant surprise. Meanwhile, Chao Xin remembered he still had some leftover blue bear meat that would be perfect for trading right now. He sent a message to the chat channel, asking if anyone had blueprints, skill books, or equipment to offer. He announced that quantities were limited and it was first come, first served, a statement that immediately caught everyone's attention. In an instant, he was flooded with private messages, and a quick glance revealed several very interesting blueprints and books. The one that caught his eye the most was a blueprint for an Ice Silver Frost Archer camp. This would allow him to build a training camp in his territory to turn ordinary, classless citizens into capable frost archers. This was exactly what he needed, as he could finally train citizens like Chao Yi and Chao Air into skilled marksmen. He could station them on watchtowers for defense, or even send them out to join the fight. However, building such a training camp required a specific frost archer training manual. That item only had a chance to drop from killing monsters in the wild, and unfortunately, he didn't have one yet. Nevertheless, he decided to trade for all those blueprints first, and after a short while, he had successfully acquired 4 or 5 of them. He even bought a skill book for Lu Muxue called Shield Bash, which is considered a must-learn divine skill for any early-stage knight. The story moves to the following morning, where we find the citizens already waiting expectantly outside the Lord's manor. As soon as he and Lu Mushua stepped outside, the people immediately offered their respectful greetings. They hailed him as their powerful lord and wished health and beauty to his lovely lady. Hearing the citizens suddenly change their address and call her the lady of the manor made Lu Mushua freeze. Her face instantly flushed a deep crimson, yet she didn't offer a word of protest, while he turned his attention to Dezhuang. He instructed her to begin laying down the tracks and minecarts he had acquired earlier. The goal was to connect them to the coal mine they had discovered to significantly speed up the extraction process. Dezhuang nodded, estimating that with the rails in place, it would only take 2 days to completely clear out that coal mine. Next, he spoke to Chao Yi, placing her in charge of smelting the various ores he had collected. Of course, refining high-level materials like mithril would require upgrading the ore processing plant to level 3. For now, they were limited to processing iron and copper, which was when Elena approached with some news. She reported that after those frost goblins were shot down by the Arrow Towers during yesterday's raid, she had followed their footprints and conducted a search about 2 kilometers away from the territory. There, she discovered a mine cave that seemed to be occupied by a large number of frost goblins. As for the stone particles, they were filled with first and second-tier creatures, all of them, naturally, just a bit stronger than he was. Elena had actually gained 2 levels just by staying at home recently, bringing her current level up to 7. This meant those goblins were likely only level 8 or 9, posing no real threat to a man of his strength. After thinking it over, he pulled a glowing red crystal from his backpack and tossed it directly to Elena. Elena caught the crystal with both hands, looking at him with confusion as he reminded her it was the junior heart of strength he had promised. Once she reached level 10, he explained, she could use this very item to advance into a second-tier creature. He had indeed made that promise before, but she clearly hadn't expected him to actually take it to heart. For a brief moment, a flicker of warmth appeared in her eyes, a look one wouldn't usually expect from a cold-blooded creature. She thanked her beloved lord deeply, declaring that Elena of the Snake Men was willing to give her everything for him. A system notification then appeared, showing that Elena's loyalty had surged from 85 all the way to 95. As he noticed the subtle, smiling glint in Elena's eyes, he reflected on how higher loyalty changed a subordinate. It represents a deeper trust in the Lord, and once that loyalty reaches its maximum level, they begin to value their Lord's commands more than their own lives, and for certain special beings, that loyalty can even transform into a more unique kind of affection. He couldn't help but wonder if Elena had actually fallen for him. Shaking off the sudden thought, he simply had Elena lead the way, focused on clearing out that goblin cave first. Upon arriving at the cave, we see that the process of clearing out the goblins was as effortless as slicing through vegetables. The task was simple, yet the rewards were quite decent, making the trip well worth the effort. In addition to several frost crystals, he found an Ascalon Archer recruitment scroll and other valuable materials. He also found a dim elite soul, just as the system notified him that they had discovered an unclaimed medium-sized copper mine. After choosing to occupy the mine, he was rewarded with a bronze treasure chest for his efforts. Upon opening it, he found standard resources alongside a specialized training manual for frost archers. It was a stroke of luck, really. He had been wishing for a training manual, and here it was. Greatly pleased, he gathered the group to return to the territory, but they hadn't been back for long before a cluster of figures appeared in the snow ahead of the settlement, causing his gaze to instantly sharpen. In this frozen wasteland, where even walking is a struggle for ordinary people, the sudden appearance of such a large group was striking. It was truly unusual, so he immediately ordered his forces to be on high alert. In an instant, every recruited creature in the territory drew their weapons and prepared for battle, while Shala slipped silently into a state of stealth. His workers scrambled back into the safety of the settlement as the mysterious figures continued their steady march toward his gates. As they drew closer, we see that it wasn't an invading army at all, but rather a traveling merchant caravan. A large escort guarded 5 heavy wagons, each one bearing the distinctive emblem of a black lion. Assam leaned in and informed his lord that this appeared to be a fleet from the Black Lion Chamber of Commerce. The Black Lion Chamber is one of the 3 most powerful merchant guilds on the Western continent, known for dealing in absolutely everything. Their trade routes span the entire world, which allowed him to breathe a small sigh of relief. If they were merely merchants, there was no need for such tension, though he did notice something peculiar among the caravan guards. There were several tall, humanoid creatures with the distinct features of cats, standing watch. Assam explained that these were members of the Siotar tribe, a race born and bred for the sole purpose of combat. They often took on mercenary work, and he could feel a palpable sense of danger radiating from 2 of them in particular. Upon checking their status panels, he saw his instincts were correct. Both were level 25, Tier 3 elite creatures. With several Tier 3 elites and a small army of Tier 2 guards, the caravan's strength was formidable. It's no wonder they dared to traverse the perilous Gale snowfields, for as we know, the greater the danger, the higher the potential profit. If they could survive the harsh environment to reach the distant towns, They could sell their goods for 10 or even 20 times their original cost. A lucrative business, if one survives it. A short, stout merchant stepped down from one of the wagons and approached the territory, crying out in genuine shock. He marveled at the sudden appearance of a settlement and a bonfire that seemed to burn eternally without ever running out of fuel. He asked, his voice trembling with awe, if he was truly the chosen lord summoned from another world by the will of the world. The merchant looked at him with such excitement that he instinctively moved forward to shake hands, but as he reached the edge of the territory, he was abruptly stopped by an invisible wall of air. To be honest, the merchant seemed more fascinated than frustrated by the barrier. Deep down, our protagonist watched calmly as the merchant struggled against the unseen force blocking his path. A look of pure shock crossed the merchant's face as he realized a mysterious power was preventing him from stepping inside. He cried out that this was indeed a chosen territory, and then, regaining his composure, he offered a deep, formal bow. He introduced himself as Hilton, a representative of the Black Lion Chamber of Commerce, offering his greetings to the chosen lord. The young lord nodded back, introducing himself as Chao Xing and returning the greeting to Excellency Hilton. He took a moment to check Hilton's attributes and found that the man was only level 6, hardly a warrior. However, he possessed a staggering array of life skills, including negotiation, bargaining, danger sense, and even a money-making instinct. It was clear how such a man could lead a caravan through these lands. Chao Xing then asked what business brought him to the territory. Hilton apologized for the intrusion, explaining that the Black Lion Chamber travels across the entire continent. They frequently trade with various lords and nobles, and seeing this new settlement, they couldn't pass up the opportunity. He asked if the lord would be interested in a trade of materials with the Black Lion Chamber of Commerce. He mentioned that if the lord had any rare treasures or items of uncertain value, they would be happy to take a look. The merchant promised to purchase them at a fair price, which, in the world of merchants, is always a matter of perspective. He also invited Chao Xing to browse the caravan's own wares to see if anything caught his eye. Immediately after, a system notification appeared, asking if he wished to accept and view the merchant's inventory list. Once he clicked confirm, a dazzling array of items appeared before him, filling his vision with potential treasures. There were blue-grade potions, rare purple materials, and even powerful purple-tier equipment waiting to be claimed. We even see a golden shield, the paladin's shield, and just looking at it makes his breath catch in his throat. In this world, materials and equipment are ranked by grade: white for common, green for excellent, blue for superior, and purple for rare. Gold, however, represents a true treasure. Golden items often possess irreplaceable functions and immense value, making them the ultimate prize. While most survivors are still struggling with basic gear, a golden item has suddenly appeared right before his eyes. One can only imagine how precious it is, though the price tag on this golden equipment is equally staggering. It costs a full 900,000 krones. Hilton, the merchant, smiles and asks with an amused glint in his eye if Lord Chao Xing has seen anything he likes, or if anything has truly captured his heart. Chao Xing sighs, admitting that while there are many things he wants, he simply cannot afford them. His entire net worth is barely over 10,000 krones, even after clearing out 2 entire hunter camps. Hilton remains unbothered and suggests that the lord check his own inventory for any unique items he might possess. He offers to appraise anything of uncertain value, and, if it suits their needs, the chamber will purchase it. After a moment of thought, he produces the viscous liquid obtained from the rock men for Hilton to inspect. The merchant explains it is a lubricating material that, once processed, can be turned into high-quality machine oil. He offers 50 krones per unit of the liquid, a fair price for such a raw material, he claims. Chao Xing nods and sells all 364 portions, earning himself 17,300 coins. His total wealth now reaches over 30,000 krones, which is quite a fortune for this stage of the journey. And it is at this moment that he remembers one more item he might be able to sell for a profit. He thinks of the black diamond found in the hunter camp, which the system had appraised as being highly valuable. Unsure of its exact worth, he tentatively brings it out to show the merchant, wondering what the reaction will be. In an instant, a black diamond refracts a beautiful, aurora-like light in his hand, but before he can even speak, Hilton's eyes widen in shock as he exclaims, "A black diamond. This is a gem so rare that one might not appear in 10 gold mines," and even Hilton's guards look on in stunned silence. In fact, a few of those guards begin to show a flicker of pure greed in their eyes. Sensing the shift in the air, Assam immediately draws his longsword to stand guard by his side. Andrew moves to protect the diamond as well, and this sudden reaction causes the merchant's guards to draw their own weapons. The atmosphere turns tense in a heartbeat, and Hilton suddenly realizes the danger of the situation. He shouts at his men, asking what they think they are doing and who gave them permission to point weapons at Lord Chao Xing. He commands them to put their weapons down immediately, every single one of them. He orders them to lower their steel and apologize to the Lord at once. And he means right now. He warns them that if anyone ruins this deal, he will personally see to it that they are punished. If anyone sabotages this business, he promises to take drastic measures. He threatens to report them to the Shishuang mercenary group and have them all fired on the spot. Upon hearing this, the expressions of the mercenaries change instantly. They promptly stow their weapons and kneel in the snow, listening to the merchant's harsh rebuke. Chao Xing waves it off, unbothered, and signals his own men to stand down, which allows Hilton to finally breathe a sigh of relief. The merchant was truly terrified that the guard's behavior might have scared off his best customer. After all, he understands better than anyone that this black diamond holds staggering value. Hilton then asks tentatively, addressing him as the respected chosen lord. He asks tentatively if Chao Xing would be willing to sell that black diamond to their group. We see Chao Xing look down at the gem in his hand, his expression thoughtful as he considers the Black Lion Chamber of Commerce. It was clear from their earlier reactions that the price of this black diamond must be exceptionally high. It likely exceeds the value of a purple-grade item, though whether it can rival a gold-grade one remains to be seen. To be honest, it is hard to say for sure, so he simply asks Hilton what price he is prepared to offer. Hilton immediately falls into deep thought, weighing his options carefully. In any normal situation, a merchant would use clever rhetoric to downplay the diamond's value. He would try to drive the price down as much as possible to secure the maximum profit for himself. However, Chao Xing's status as a chosen lord and the fact that he produced such a rarity in their very first deal changes things. Hilton realizes that Chao Xing is a lord with immense potential, someone worth keeping as a long-term partner. If he can leave a good impression now, there will surely be more opportunities for cooperation in the future. So, Hilton explains that while standard black diamonds fetch between 200,000 and 400,000 crowns, a top-tier orange-quality black diamond can sell for as much as 500,000 crowns. Hearing this, a hint of joy touches Chao Xing's face. 500,000 crowns already exceeds the cost of a purple-grade item. Yet, Hilton's next words bring an even bigger surprise, and we see a flash of excitement in the Lord's eyes. This price even surpasses the value of that gold-grade shield, leading Chao Xing to make a counter-proposal. He suggests a trade. He wants that golden shield plus an additional 100,000 crowns in cash. Hilton considers the extra 50,000 crown increase for a moment before finally nodding in agreement. With the deal struck, Hilton signals to the mercenaries waiting behind him. Two of the mercenaries step forward, each carrying a large, heavy black chest through the snow. Then, right before our eyes, he opens the chests, one of which contains that very same golden shield. The other chest is filled to the brim with glittering crown coins, and Hilton can't help but offer a word of praise. He tells Chao Xing that the Lord has a keen eye, explaining that he found this shield in an ancient tribe. Its craftsmanship was so exquisite that even the great dwarven master blacksmith, Tadake, was left in absolute awe. The master even claimed that this might be the very last shield of its kind left in the entire world. Chao Xing simply nods, though he doesn't pay the story much mind. To be honest, he knows how merchants work. They love to embellish their goods to inflate the value, so he ignores the fluff and proceeds directly with the exchange. As the trade is finalized, we see a look of genuine satisfaction spread across both of their faces. At this moment, Hilton looks at Chao Xing once more with a lingering sense of greed and asks if the Lord has any other rarities. Chao Xing informs him that he has nothing else for the time being, which Hilton accepts with a polite smile. He assures Chao Xing that he will visit the blizzard tundra often and looks forward to many more trades in the future. With a polite chuckle, Chao Xing agrees and steps outside his territory to shake Hilton's hand as a gesture of goodwill. Hilton remarks on what a pleasure it has been to cooperate, but his eyes are already wandering elsewhere. He glances at the territory behind Chao Xing, his gaze finally locking onto the tavern that is currently under construction. Hilton's eyes light up as if he's just made a major decision, and he addresses the Lord with newfound interest. He notes that the territory is already taking shape and that even a tavern is nearly completed. He asks if Chao Xing would be willing to establish a formal trade route with the Black Lion Chamber of Commerce. In the future, their caravans could use this territory as a primary trading post while traveling through the blizzard tundra. Naturally, they would pay a fee for the privilege, and as a partner, Chao Xing would receive special benefits. He would enjoy a 5% discount on all future dealings, a notification the system is quick to confirm. We see that the territory's prosperity has finally reached the required level, prompting Hilton to formally apply for a trade partnership. The system asks if he is willing to establish this relationship with the Black Lion Chamber of Commerce, and the choice is clear. Chao Xing realizes this arrangement offers nothing but benefits, so he gives Hilton a firm, decisive nod of approval. He tells Hilton that he is more than happy to cooperate, a response that makes the merchant beam with pure delight. At the same time, a notification confirms that their favorability has increased, officially reaching a friendly status. Chao Xing adds a small disclaimer, noting that the territory is still under construction and will need time to fully develop its facilities. Hilton simply waves his hand dismissively, signaling that it's no trouble at all, which, to be honest, is exactly what a merchant would say. Then, as if a new thought has just struck him, Hilton turns back toward the Lord with a curious expression. He observes that building up such a vast territory will surely require a significant amount of extra manpower. He asks Chao Xing if he might be interested in recruiting a fresh batch of new subjects to join his growing domain.